Hello out there. Welcome back to TableTalk discussion and discourse. I, as always, am your host, Alejo, aka Great95.
I am your now quenched host, SneakyAdolf.
I hate that. Hate that a
Gonna have
lot.
to censor that one. And I'm the third one. So let's go.
Okay, alright, cool.
Sounds
What
about
the
right.
fuck are we talking about?
So before we get into what we are talking about, I just wanted to make sure to highlight a comment that we got a few days ago on our last episode. So it was from Majin Majin E, and he left a very, very nice, very lengthy comment. And I think I showed you guys the screenshot.
I don't.
I can repost it.
Yeah,
Kindly do.
Give me a moment. Let me just.
Because I probably did see it, but I just don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. Do one of these. Do one of these. Okay.
Yes. Oh.
So.
No.
Oh, you didn't see this? Okay.
No.
I apologize, but he went into very great detail about how he hasn't played Fate, and he was talking about in regards to the catch-all argument that I was making of in Fate, how you could make yourself basically able to do just about anything, and kind of being more worried about that. He basically says that the DM should be able to test that and make it so that you you are still flawed in that way. And excuse me. And I replied saying like, oh yeah, I'm stupid because I didn't even think of that at all. So very good, very lengthy comment that definitely goes into that. And then I remember, and I had said so yesterday on Juice's show, that they also had mentioned that they thought that Fate would work very well as a Disney Renaissance kind of.
Yes. Yeah, you mentioned that part to us.
Yes, yeah. I thought I had posted the screenshot. I apologize. But yeah. So this I'm quite happy with this comment.
Yeah, no, this is great.
I think that this is well put together, and I think, and I don't want to be the person who's like, well, I thought of that, but I just didn't say it. That me being the sort of dick that I am in RPGs, making a totally Mary Sue sounding character would absolutely be a type of thing I would do to check if I were playing with a new DM, for instance, just to see how much he's actually paying attention. Which is something that Majini highlights really well.
Yes.
And yeah, I actually regret not mentioning that. But yeah, absolutely. I really like the idea of the also having your trouble be tied in with your sort of like your claim to fame, like
your high concept.
You're a fantastic engineer, but like, whoo boy, do you waste that money on backgammon?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it sounds like a good way to prop both up, and it's not obviously necessary because you can make your trouble whatever, but it sounds like a very good way to make both tie together very well.
And I personally really like his point about the catch-all thing, where you could make yourself this kind-hearted prince. You could put yourself in a position of power, but then the DM can just as easily make that position of power very dangerous to be in. I really like that. And how if you try to do that, it can be just like he points out, it's a great way to test to see if the DM is on autopilot. Because if they're on autopilot, they'll let you have it, and they won't really do anything with it. But if they're really thinking, and they're maybe a bit of an asshole like we are, they'll make you pay for it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so I really dig that. That's great.
But it is definitely a two-edged sword of a test where you think to yourself, oh, the DM didn't say anything, that means he's gonna let me have it, I'm gonna punish the DM for this. And then the DM's thinking to himself, that pompous prick is going to hate that he wrote that.
And the other thing that he puts in, he says the manner in which fate points are the manner in which fate points are implemented is a tad confusing, especially the story detail bit, which at least costs resources. But I believe the basic premise behind any character can be sufficiently tested in such a way that even if they are meant to be a Gary/Mary Sue, they will not be. So, that's basically the entire thing. And again, agreed. Fate points, little still weird about him personally.
Yeah. Fate's not really my game.
Yeah, it's definitely.
I do like the idea of the DM is basically free to interpret how it's worded on the sheet, and from that able to create story details. I think that is really cool for more like free form story creation. I just personally I'm the type of person that if I am writing something down on a character sheet, I have a definite idea of what my character is.
Yeah.
And the mind goblins, they go wah when people could potentially misinterpret what the character is.
Yeah.
And then what I will do is I will sit and I will look at the paper for 15 minutes as I contemplate the perfect concoction of 3 or 4 or 5 words to sum up my high concept.
Yep. So that being said,
I realize, but I do realize that is also just me.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely like we would love to play just to see, but it's one of those things that I feel like it's not going to be my system of choice either.
Yeah. For me, I am very happily married to Pathfinder 2e. I don't need no homewrecker fate system coming in our love.
So, with that being said, thank you, Majin E. Very much appreciate it.
Good show.
Yes, good show, sir. So
perhaps
today,
a minor golf clap.
Oh yes.
Enough. We cannot give them too much praise.
So, that being said, today we're going to be talking about some D&D stuff, / it's really kind of general RPG stuff as well. We're going to be talking about your character's backstory again. We've kind of touched on it a little bit every now and again, but today we're going to be dedicating more so of a look into it with a couple of videos. The first one is going to be by How to Be a Great GM. This is one of the ones that is good.
Well, it's one of the ones that I've recommended.
Yes.
And when I watched it, it was good at the time. I don't know if my opinion has changed, but
fair enough.
I don't think it will have.
Fair enough.
I think I've seen this one before, and I think it was pretty good.
Yeah. So, hopefully, this is 6 ultimate questions that define your character PC tips. And while this isn't specifically backstory like in the title and all of that, it does relate to it quite heavily.
Yes.
I assume.
It does.
Didn't you post this after you watched the Are You Doing Dice Wrong? Or
I did. I posted this one a long time ago.
Right.
I'm pretty sure I've seen it.
It's been a long time coming. So let us begin here.
This is my grandfather. The resemblance, of course, is striking. His name was Julian. He died a miserable death, unknown. This is my grandmother. Again, striking resemblance. do not grieve. She too died an unknown. But my mother, you will see, clearly from out of the family.
I just... I very much love this bit. I do.
Yeah, it's great.
Because he's like, I can just see him just putting it down and like just moving slightly so it looks like, he's picking it back up, but he's just got it in his hand the whole time. And so it's very, very good. Yes, clearly.
Out of the family.
Thank you, Guy.
The cheekbones, the hole in the head, very indicative of how she died. It is my father, after which I take my physical form, my father giving me his essence so that I might carry on the family
in the left
dream.
hand.
Father, come to me, father.
And
here is my father. The nose, the mouth. When he was alive, he had hair. But it is because of my father that I must continue his pursuits to take over the world so that I might raise my family and be united with them again.
This whole time, I've noticed the gradual shift of the hood, too.
Yep,
It's just completely covering his eyes. And it's just like...
And then because of that, you gotta lean even further back and look down your nose even harder.
It's very good.
I only wish if he did the previous 3 people with the right hand and then transferred the skull to the left hand.
Yeah, to show the more importance. Yeah.
Either that or like have the father skull be like green or something.
Yeah, just have it be something different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or he does
7:30. So
there we go.
Oh, welcome back.
He's back.
Yeah, that was... Oh, God. Okay. Good to see that. Apologies.
Where did you leave?
I cut off immediately as you were about to say your second thing of what would have made the joke better.
I would have enjoyed him putting the skull down,
Mm-hmm.
and you see him grab like a hammer, and then you hear a whack,
Mm-hmm.
and then he picks up the final skull,
Mm-hmm.
and for this one, it's his father that was murdered, and it's like my father with a hole still in his skull.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would have been good too.
But still, regardless, excellent bit.
Yes,
I love it.
Hopefully that doesn't happen. My cutting out doesn't happen too much. We'll see.
If you cut out, just let us know. Oh wait,
yeah.
you're starting to robot out too.
Oh, good.
Right.
I also...
Well, let's power through this then.
Yeah, I'm also... It wasn't letting me play the video, so that was interesting. Anyway.
Hello and welcome to today's show. My name is Guy and you're watching How to Be a Great Player. Today we're going to start asking some questions about your character's backstory. Now these are the 6 questions that I believe will absolutely define your character. Now if you did watch this episode on the other channel, it's the Great GM Live Sessions, then you're going to find a little bit of insight here as we've expanded upon our original ideas.
Ooh.
If you haven't watched that other episode, stick with us, we've got you covered. So when we're talking about backgrounds, when we're talking about origin stories, we're talking about the past, but we're also talking about the future. Now, how can you predict the future for your character before you've even created your character? Well, there's all kinds of things that we can make sure we include in our backstories, which will certainly influence the future of our character. We're going to unpack origin. What is the origin of your character? We're going to unpack the past, and we're going to unpack their future. So stick with us as we go through those. Now, today I will be using you as the pronoun in terms of, well, you are doing this, you are doing that. And I would suggest that when you're creating your characters, that you do the same. Why do I do that? Why do I say use the you or the I? I did this, I went and did that, I went and did the next thing. For some people that might be uncomfortable because some of the questions are quite personal. For others, it will certainly help you to get inside the head of your character. Whenever you're creating a character, if you use the word I, in this case, I did this, I did that, it tends to make it a little bit more real, a little bit more tangible in your mind. I went for a walk in the forest. That's a generic statement. I went for a walk in the forest and saw orcs. Well, now my brain starts to put together imagery of me walking in a forest, which I may have done in real life, and then it adds in the orcs, which is not impossible for the brain to make that small leap. So what it does is it makes it feel more real. That's the base.
So I actually really like this trick. I've always used the pronouns of he
Mhm.
when creating characters.
Yeah.
And I have noticed that when I write characters, I tend to like rewrite multiple drafts
Mhm.
of what their story is, and I think that this is actually probably a really good way to avoid that, because by keeping the focus on you, it avoids getting sort of too unrealistic, and it promotes, I guess, critique, I guess you could say, as ideas flow.
Yeah, the way that I've seen a lot of, like, when I'm in games, I try to always think of it as I, as he's
Oh
put,
yeah.
right? And so it's one of those things where I've heard multiple people kind of, I mean, I think we've all done it. We switch between I and they, or I and he, or I and she, right? Just because it's one of those things of like you're either in the
I'll
moment.
investigate the room.
Yeah.
Oh, am I lagging a little bit? Ooh. So you're in the moment, or you're less in the moment, depending on the situation. And sometimes and I've heard this a couple of times where people will like correct themselves in saying they instead of I when they're doing stuff in character. And I'm just, every time I'm just like, no, you're okay. I don't say this, unfortunately, like, because like I don't want to interrupt, but it's just like, no, you're in character, you are the character, you can say I. It's totally like, I highly encourage that. In fact, that way you then give it more that personal feel, so that you're just like, yes, this is me doing this.
Yeah, I know I've definitely, like, as Boris said, like, okay, I'll go do this, I'll go do that, while they're doing this, I'll be here. And one of the reasons why of course, I tend to do it more subconsciously now, but one of the things that I noticed, especially when I started like putting in conscious effort to do it in role playing, was it also helped me feel tension more in
Yes.
like very like situations in which I know that we're being stalked, but my character doesn't, and I'm like, okay, I'll go into this room and split off from the group.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and I think I don't think there's any sort of issue when you are writing up your character and using they, and like they did this instead of I do, because I feel like writing in the third person is just such a natural thing to do for humans, because it's basically how almost all stories are told. Almost, obviously, a good deal of them are told from the first person.
Yeah. They all have what's it called? Omniscient narrator, I believe.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And so that way it's like, oh, he ran up the he ran up the wall, did a backflip, and snacked the bad guy's neck and saved the day.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
it's not
yes.
I did that, it's they did that.
Yeah,
or he did that, you know.
It's
so
definitely, it's one of those things that's harder to write about yourself, I would say, as well, because I personally don't like feeling like I'm bragging, right? If that makes sense.
I was a great champion. It's
yeah.
like,
yeah.
And like,
And then
that
I
kind of
saw you go to
translates.
Taco Bell last night. You know,
And I'm just like, yeah.
And one of the things that kind of sticks out to me is that I don't know how well you guys always did in the past with, I versus he or she. But I've noticed that even in combat, when stuff is going on and like you're so much more focused on what's going on as opposed to actual role play, you still instinctually say, okay, well, I'm going to run over here.
Yeah.
Instead of, okay, well, Boris is going to run over here. Because I didn't hear that when you hid behind the rock when you went into that cave.
Yeah.
I heard, I'm going to hide behind this rock.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to send my homunculus into the cave. Or I'm going to run in after him, you know?
Yeah, I personally, because I know I do refer to Boris a lot as like, oh yes, Boris will do this. And I just kind of switch between them all seamlessly. Like all three pronouns are kind of equal to me at this point.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I mean, like, if you went the whole, I mean, hell, if you went through the entire campaign basically in the third person saying Boris is going to do this or Boris is going to do that, honestly, I wouldn't really mind.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't really see that. I don't see that or feel as though that is bad role play. Not really.
Not.
Yeah, no,
because
absolutely.
Yeah, not something that minor doesn't really affect me at all.
I will say, now that I'm starting to put in a bit more work into developing my sort of completely original world, last night inspiration struck, and instead of going to bed at a decent time, I instead elected to stay up till 7 a.m. writing a Pantheon. And
fun.
yeah, and I noticed when I was writing a Pantheon, what got me the most productive in my writing is I used we. With the sort of standpoint of we the humans see the gods and like deities this way, because it's ultimately not important what how the gods actually are in a pantheon. It's important how humans see them, because you're going to be interacting with humans most of the time. If the gods are different than how humans perceive them, then that will come up maybe once or twice if your character ever has the chance to talk to a deity. But when you're talking about a deity, is probably going to be to some follower of that religion. And at that point in time, it matters what we think about the gods and goddesses.
See, now, I feel like you could have gotten, you might be able to do even better if you wrote it, this is how Switch feel about the gods.
I do, actually. I have two gods that are like diametrically opposed to each other. They're both gods.
Damn it, you didn't get the joke. Because this is how we feel about the gods, and it was like, this is how Switch, Nintendo consoles. No, okay.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
That one was a little.
Sorry,
my brain.
I like to forget that console existed.
That's fine. The Wii.
What?
The
Wii had good stuff. What do you mean?
We had some good stuff.
It had some good stuff.
It had a lot of good stuff, actually.
It had Monster Hunter 3.
It did, yeah. It had
yeah,
quite a few
so
good things.
Yeah, so did the DS.
That's
Yeah.
Anyway,
let's continue.
Yeah.
That's the basic idea. So just be aware of that when you are writing a character. Rather than say they did this, they did that, he went there, she went there, together they did this. I went there. I did this with my friends. It helps make the character come alive. It really does. So give it a try if you haven't done that before.
I'll keep that in mind.
I was going to say it can, and if it helps, great. If it doesn't, then just go back to the way that you were doing it.
As with all things, your mileage may vary. It really depends on how you storytell as a person.
Exactly.
Yeah. The way I write, I always write they or he or she, and then when I'm playing the character, it's I.
Yeah, that's typically what I aim for.
Yeah. It seems to work the best that way.
Yeah. At least for me
as
anyway.
well, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, origins. Let's talk origins. Here are the 3 questions. Now, if you keep track, as in the last video, I can't count, so it's actually 7 questions we're going to be asking, but these are the fundamentals. These 2 questions here. Where were you born? And are your parents, or who are your parents, I should say, who are or were your parents? And are they still alive? That's a bonus question. That are they still alive is a bonus question. Now, I've done videos before where I have lamented that the usual answer to this question, are they alive, is no, they died horribly in a fire, or they were murdered, or I brought about their doom.
We've talked about this a few times.
Yeah, the orphaned rogue.
Yep.
Yeah. The half-elven orphan rogue.
Yep. And this is actually the video that helped me write my gloaming character.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more interesting to have that relationship be active so that you can play off it in the future / it can be used against you.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I was, a demon spawn, or there's often times that we want to have the parents dead, and I have spoken at length about why that's a mistake, and why you shouldn't try and do that.
In fairness, to be fair,
we need a soundboard for that.
we are also, and I'm not saying that his point is wrong, but in the interest of fairness, the average healthy, socially and emotionally fulfilled person does not often feel the need to give up their life so that they can hunt vampires.
It's true.
There's a tweet by Liam O'Brien, which is, "Hey Carl, do you want to leave your loving wife of 6 months who is pregnant with your child and go hunt vampires with me?" And then the person responds, "Fuck off, Carl."
Yeah, no, what I would say, actually, because he said it's a mistake, and that's not true. I would say
it's not a mistake, it's just...
It's an overused trope.
Yes.
And you are potentially limiting... well, not limiting, but you're reducing the number of things that can happen to you, even if it is just by a few.
Like, the way that I could see you, if you really need death as an instigator, don't use your family, use a close friend, use a mentor, use just something that is close to your character, that can inspire them to become or to have them become an adventurer.
And then if you want them to be an absolute rage monster, make it their dog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Get that John Wick shit in here. Absolutely.
I had the second character I ever made had the planet that he was living on get attacked and pretty much burnt to ash.
Yep.
And he had space bandits, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I was gonna say, it's literally the Marines. They did an exodus, unfortunately.
Oh.
Yeah.
Exterminatus, excuse me.
And he had one brother of his die, but that was because his brother was always really sick and just did not survive the journey to the LZ to leave. And his parents were still alive, his other siblings were still alive, and a lot of the money that he made while working in the Imperial Guard. Oh man, I made a
you made a 40K character
Warhammer character. Oh no.
without having known much more about Warhammer at that point.
Anyway. At that point in time, all I knew of Warhammer was, yes, the Emperor protects.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, no, most of the money that he made was sent to his mother and sisters who were staying with family.
So wait, the mother and the sister who are family were staying with more family?
Yes, the mother side of the family.
Extended.
Oh,
family,
got it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and again, if you super want to use the dead parents trope, you can, and if it works best, then should, I suppose.
Yeah.
You can make it interesting. You can make it work. You can make it unique.
Do consider the dead siblings approach, because in my experience, it's very easy to make them drop like flies, and it's always justifiable that there can be more, because there are some families that have 11 kids, man. You could be like, 5 of my brothers and sisters died, and they're like, oh my god, your you're like practically an only child, and you're like, what? No, dude, I've got like 6 other like
Yeah.
siblings. What are you
They were
talking
just
about?
they were just the shit ones. And like another one, if you want to make an older character, you could try with like a dead son daughter, like
Mhm.
something like you can make it so that you are the recipient of that kind of trauma of like you've born your children and you have outlived them.
Or even old war buddies are dropping
Oh.
like flies for some reason,
Yeah.
and all of the people in your regiment have been dying under the same circumstances.
Yeah.
That's a Call of
And
Cthulhu trouble.
Yeah,
And-
could be, yeah.
and you're fearing that you're next, so you're like, I'm going on walkabout. And then while you're on walkabout, you are hiding out in a tavern and you meet other players.
Could be a walkabout, or could be you're trying to find it, right? And you're trying to take it
Could
out
be.
first, right?
Mhm.
Could be anything, really. Anyway, let's continue.
So let's go back to the first one. Where were you born? Where were you born? That's a very complicated question to ask, and it's one that a lot of people fail to ask and then to pursue in terms of asking. What's so important about where you were born? Well, to be perfectly frank with you, it defines almost everything about your character. And I know a lot of people say, oh, it's nurture versus nature. Nature doesn't really care where you're born to a large degree. It's all about how you were nurtured, how you were raised. Yes, that's absolutely valid. I also think, however, that nature is also entirely valid as well. So let's unpack this simple question. Where were you born? Let's say that you're creating a dwarf, and the dwarf was born in a mine underground. We're going for a typical cliched dwarven background.
Sure.
Okay, that's part of answering where you were born, but if I said to you, where were you born, you might dismiss it and say, well, I was born in the USA. Okay, where in the USA? You were born in a mine. Okay, where was that mine? What mountain range was it? Was it on the southern continent, the northern continent? Was it in the Arctic? Was it in the middle of the desert? Where you were born is incredibly important to be very, very specific. The more specific you can be, the more detail automatically gets added to your character backstory. So just by answering this one question, you're getting almost a paragraph's worth of information.
So yeah, I was gonna say,
Oh no, go on.
I was gonna say that that the use of location promotes what culture there is around you. It promotes outside factors that influence what the situation is. It promotes your level of wealth. It's like a bunch of different factors come from this kind of question. Definitely. And answering all of that stuff gives you that whole idea of like, if I was a poor person growing up in the slums of the city, but it was more catered to taking care of the poor rather than having them be more downtrodden, right? So you don't look at the people who are higher up on you, higher up and have more money than you as leech, or not leech, have them look at you as a leech, I suppose. They don't do that. They more so just try to help, and you come from that like better kind of thing. So you have more respect for people that are higher than you in power and wealth. Or you could be on the other side and completely despise them because they, I don't know, they do something to the poor, like sacrifice them in some sort of way, not necessarily their lives, but using them as manpower and such, as cheap labor or all that kind of stuff.
There's when he said, where were you born, and started talking about how important that was, I immediately thought of Sir Davos Seaworth from Game of Thrones, the man who was born in Flea Bottom, and because of that was able to identify with the lower class, and his being brought up in that environment tinged all of the interactions that he had not only in meeting new people and in
Mhm.
forming business alliances and contracts and stuff with them, but also in what sort of business the businessman that he became, namely being smuggling.
Mhm.
Um, and that is the sort of thing like, okay, you're from a small farming village, so even though you're a wizard, you probably would have had some experience as a child with farming and
Yep.
like 3 crop rotation. And because of that, I, as a DM, will probably take that into account for relevant nature checks or survival checks to recognize like deer tracks, bear tracks, gopher holes, stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah. It helps you get all that kind of uh it helps you shape your lens. I guess is the best way to put it. So that you can have that influence as you put it for Davos. It influences your conversations with anyone. Like if you're talking to somebody who grew up in the same situation as you might look at them fondly. You might look at them as less than you, depending on if you've gotten higher than them in the status quo or like anything. It really matters what it was, the situation that you were in beforehand, and like that spice. It's good to have.
And for the people out there who only care about like whether this will be relevant in combat, it can be. It's
Can be, yeah.
say you're from that peasant farming village. Oh, what's the name of that? It's like a slime that tends to it's technically like an aberration.
Mm-hmm.
It's aligned with Juiblax or
The
Jubilax.
Ublex.
No, not Ublax.
Uh,
It rests on like windows and stuff
oh,
and
fuck.
doors.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I have no idea.
It's
Shit.
green. It's got red eyes. It was in Mordenkainen's, I believe.
Yeah, oh god, I know exactly what you're talking about. Fuck me, my brain cannot remember.
Yeah, it was some sort of ooze. But
Yeah.
if you're from that peasant farming village, the way that those creatures tend to hunt is by appearing as moss to the casual observer. And then when you walk through the door or near the window, they attack you, kill you, and then like pull you into, I think it was like a pocket dimension.
Damn.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, they're not great. And if you're more familiar with like, oh yeah, we had perhaps as a child you had a bad crop and a lot of your pumpkins went to mold or something, I would personally give a perception bonus to someone to notice that that was a slime and not like mold or moss around a window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It can inform the character so that you have a little bit more of an advantage in that respect, so you can be more useful to your party. Because all your background choices should probably matter in some way. If not just roleplay wise, then mechanically it can. But regardless, having it reflect so that your DM can just go, yeah, this will give you this because of your backstory. It just gives that thing so that it can make sense in that situation.
So
I gotta flip through Mordenkainen's until I find it.
So my backstory is that I was born inside of a magical armory, and so I grew up, and I have a full set of plus 20 plate armor and like a plus 50 sword.
Now, why were you born in a magical armory?
Because my dad was a wizard, and he like fell in love with this hot chick who was also like a really accomplished smith, and so she made the armor for me, and then my dad enchanted it for me, and they're like, hey, go out and be a badass like we were. And then they died. Now I had to avenge them.
That is actually disturbingly similar to a character in my campaign's backstory.
Oh God!
He wanted a Stalrim sword.
I remember that now.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like.
I found the creature. It is an alkalith.
Alkalith.
They appear alkalith.
Yeah.
They appear on page 130 of Mordenkainen's. They're a type of demon. An
Oh.
alkalith is easily mistaken for some kind of foul fungal growth that appears on doorways, windows, and other portals. These dripping infestations conceal the demonic nature of the alkalith, making what should be a dire warning appear strange but otherwise innocuous.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wherever
yeah.
alkaliths take root, they weaken the fabric of reality, creating a portal through which even nastier demons can invade.
Not
Yes, they're really cool.
good. Get rid of the mold.
Yeah.
Get rid of your mold, dude.
Get Gordon Ramsay to get in, clean up your fucking restaurant.
took,
They're letting demons in.
I took the inspiration of that for my campaign, and that's why I remember them, because there was basically a time portal that was covered in slime mold. And that was like the hint of where the portal actually was the fact that at one weird wall in the room, there was just the outline of almost like a doorway, but just in mold.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Which you don't really have to think about too much. So, you were born in a mine shaft in the Durag Mountains, which are far to the north in the wasteland areas of Jugal. Oh, the Durag Mountains. Let's unpack those a little bit. Talk to me about the Durag Mountains. Are they cold? Are they harsh? Yeah. What type of rock is it? Is it heavy, ancient dolerite rock, which is very difficult to mine through? Is it shale? Is it sandstone? Let's explore that a little bit. Yeah, the Durag Mountains are a tough, harsh environment. Where does this information come from? Your GM. Ask your GM, hey, where can I get information on these mountains? Talk to me about these mountains. I want my dwarf to come from a mountain range where there's dwarves. And he can say, well, Durag Mountains is a good place to go. You go, okay, great. I want Durag Mountains.
That being said, as a DM, it is the most infuriating thing in the world if someone says, hey, I want to be a red guard. Where can I be from? And my answer is, okay, well, there's a lot of red guards in Hammerfell. And they say, okay, but I want to be from the swamps. And I'm like, okay. Sure, you're a traveling merchant?
Yeah. It's like,
I was going to say.
Well, they're
the like, but the build of my character is reliant on me, like, running across the water in the swamps. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's the thing, because it's always like, where does blank come from? Okay, well, blank come from so and so, and it's like, well, I don't want to be from so and so. I want to be the special one. You know?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you have to work with your DM just to make sure that it makes sense, right? Yeah. Because not everyone's gonna be from everywhere. That's not.
You're not gonna find a fucking Egyptian in northern Siberia.
I mean, you could, I suppose, but it's one of those things where it's like, unless there are extras, like special circumstances.
Yeah. Real weird reasons for them being there, then like, sure. It's like I threw a sea elf. They're a lesser known race from the far south of Tamriel. Like, they basically all they have for land is a small archipelago. And they're pretty much the whole race are pirates.
Cool.
Yeah.
And they found one in the northernmost city of Tamriel, and it's because he had been shipwrecked and like currents had brought him there. And he presumed all his crew was dead, and he basically spent his life drinking away his sorrows in a tavern, and everyone was like, huh, there's a weird pale elf whose skin is kind of like a chameleon. Well, and then they kept on going, and one was like, I want to drink with him, and I'm like, okay, and they got a little bit of information, but had things gone poorly, then he would have piloted the ship that would help them fight the Nightmare Kraken. Had they not prevented the rising. But I'm like, man, dude, that was a cool character.
Yeah, well, you're not gonna get
No DM. No.
No DM, no, stop.
No story for you.
Why you make cool thing?
Even now they have like the half elf, he's half Altmer rogue in the party.
Yeah.
And that rogue's whole thing is that his girlfriend is a Maomer. And it's like this sort of forbidden love thing going on, and he's been outcast from the Somerset Isles until he proves his worth.
Yeah, you've mentioned this quite a few times, yeah.
Yes. And I'm just waiting for someone to mention, like, once, like, "Oh, yeah, no, there is this weird elf in this, like, podunk bar of a city that we traveled through with you, actually. We just didn't stop in the city." So, like, if he sees a Mayomer, he's gonna be like, "Holy shit."
Yeah, exactly. Because that's relevant to his stuff.
Yeah, and then everyone else is like, "Oh, yeah, no, there's just some fucking albino elf thing,
Yeah,
I guess. I don't
exactly.
know."
So yeah, like I was saying before, work with your DM so that where you come from makes sense, because don't be afraid to ask for a special circumstance, I suppose, but be prepared to have that special circumstance not be applied because sometimes not every time, but sometimes the world just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Be flexible if you want a special
Yes.
circumstance. If you
Exactly.
want to be the special snowflake who has a power that is only taught in this one area of the world, then your character, who you've been dead set on being from the far west, is gonna better be a bit more flexible with his birthplace.
It's gonna it's one of those things where if you want somebody to be flexible, you have to be flexible yourself about it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Skaven fucking went east to become master ninjas, and then they came back.
Yeah, but the Skaven are that special circumstance where they just live everywhere.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
If they want to go somewhere, they just burrow there.
Yeah. And then set up everything easily.
Yeah.
And the more odd thing about that is, I would say, all right, how old is your Skaven character? It's like, 15 years old. And I'm like, that's old.
Yeah, that's an old Skaven.
How did you live that long?
Yeah, exactly.
If the mountains are harsh, if they're a tough environment, your character's more likely to be a tough character. Someone who's hardy and who doesn't look into the finer things in life. What's the point of having a soft bed? At least you've got a roof over your head. We had to fight for every scrap of corridor we got. However that might be, put yourself into that situation. We grew up in a tough environment. It was harsh. It was cold. Never very warm. Spring was fleeting and summer was a couple days, which we never really remember anyway, because we were only allowed up onto the surface once a month because it was so dangerous to go up onto the surface. So we remained below ground, but we dreamed of the stars at night. All of that comes from just, where were you born? I mean, that's fantastic. You can just let your mind wander free. Try and position yourself in that space. Look at it.
The slight problem that can arise, though, is that you let your mind wander, and then if you haven't talked to your GM about how their world is, your mind might have wandered like into too much of the fantastical, where some things just don't apply. But in that case, I would say that your DM should be able to make things work out, like basically one for one. You know, like if you're like, it was too dangerous because there were lots of owl bears on the surface, right? And they all live there, huh? And then your DM looks at it and goes, well, owl bears don't really reside here. But let's say, I don't know, a lot of
bear.
Yeah, no, they just replaced the thing with, like, I don't know, like white dragons, right? And then it's like, oh,
or like winter wolves.
Yeah, or like winter wolves.
Or you had to dig super deep because there's a purple worm infestation, so you had to dig even deeper than they go.
Yeah, exactly. So like it's one of those things where it's, yeah, let the mind wander, write it all out, and hopefully they can just slot you in, and if not, then some minor changes might be necessary.
And then pray you don't die at level 1.
Yes.
Or like there's a city underneath a lake, and it's always like raining underneath as water drips through. And the city is always like propping up like these incredibly high scaffolds to keep the ceiling of the cavern in check, and like a new leak opens up and there's a bunch of dwarves in like canoes hurriedly building up a new scaffolding and put a large rock in place, and they're like,
dude,
it's safe for this week, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully we don't see a new hole until next week, because I mean they're usually a week apiece.
Eventually, this will all just be a roof.
When we came in here, we had to build the ceiling. Must be fucking nice.
Real world example. What happens if you were born in rural China today? What's rural China like? I don't know. Let me go and do some research on that. Let's go and have a look at what rural China is like. Is there technology? Is there, let's use the typical cliched ignorance, is there electricity? Is there running water? Yes, there is. There's all those kinds of things, and there's highways, and there's roads, and there's cars and things. But is life the same as if I was born in rural England or, let's say, rural South Africa? Very, very, very different. And the government that we are looking at is very different. The attitudes of the people are very different.
That is I didn't even think of, like, where you were born also leads into that, of, like, what's the government like around you? Then you get the little bit of information.
Wars.
Yeah, you get that information of, like, how I even was saying, like, higher up than you before in my example of the slums, but I for some reason didn't think of, like, lords for some reason, like, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like, yeah.
What propaganda of the Easterners do you believe and take for as fact?
Yeah, what are their beliefs? What's the, like, all that kind of stuff. It's just so much. Yeah. Fuck.
What's a common import or a common export?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Do you export metal? Like, are you in a place that's, like, rich in ore or oil or fruit? You know, do you grow food? And like, are you in a very fertile place or are you in a very barren place and you have to import water?
Yeah, absolutely. That's or have you done the, oh god, I remember I researched for my desert town. They use a system in which they go and they collect seawater and then they distill it so that it's actually fresh water. They get all the salt out and everything. And I, like, looked into a very simple apparatus that could, like, believably be constructed without magic or anything. And I was like, oh yeah. And then I found, like, a irrigation system and everything. And oh man.
Dude.
Super
take
fun.
take like a cookie sheet, kick it hard so it's slightly bent, suspend that over, like, a pot of boiling seawater, and then have, like, a larger tray underneath to collect. And, like,
exactly.
And then
so cool.
Then after the process, you can export salt.
Yeah,
to places that don't have.
Salt is valuable too.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, yeah, it's one of those things. And it's really I'm glad that this is the first thing, because it is actually, like he said, so full of, like,
it's excellent
information.
Really,
and it is one of the things, though, as important as it is, it can be difficult without a good idea of what you want your character to be. To pick a good spot for them to be born, and so you're sort of stuck in a bit of a catch-22. But
not to mention, you do need to be intimately familiar with the world that you're going to be playing in, because for as much as we talk about how popular Forgotten Realms is, I don't know shit about Forgotten Realms.
Oh yeah, true.
Like, basically the only thing I know about Forgotten Realms is Waterdeep, the Sword Coast, and I think that's it. That's it. Like, that's all I know about that fucking place.
I imagine you're familiar with the Pantheon and, like, the devils.
Yeah, I know the gods, most of them. I know, like, Palor and
well, he just means geographically.
Yeah, Bahamut. Yeah, like, geographically.
And,
like, if you asked me, if we were playing in Forgotten Realms and you asked me where I was born, I would have to, like, look at that map and be like, what is this place even like?
Yeah, exactly.
Such is also the case of we not played too much in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, it's
like,
true.
Current campaign excluded.
Well, I mean, technically, it's not Forgotten Realms.
Hell is the only through line there.
Yeah, because I mean,
we're not using the map of the mortal plane.
No, the mortal plane is not Forgotten Realms. I made my own.
Yeah.
Oh,
and my world is a custom world.
Gotcha.
I don't sense much confidence in that.
How can I have confidence or doubt in something I know nothing about?
Well, you can have confidence or doubt in the person who revealed that they made it.
I assure you, I am 100% neutral about this. I am the character from Futurama.
Oh, I get it. So you don't believe that never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I will let your mind goblins taint how you interpret that sentence.
That is okay.
So I was going to say the oh fuck, now I'm losing it. Nope, it's gone.
Okay, let's
All
play.
right. Yep.
Wow.
Oh no, I got it.
Oh,
Oh,
wow. I was gonna say these questions can also like I know you said it's kind of a catch-22 of like knowing what kind of character you want beforehand, but these kind of questions can inform you of how your character is, like stats wise and everything, considering right, you roll out stats or you don't, but you then say, oh, I'm a hardier character because of the climate that I'm in. Like it would make the most sense if myself and my people were more hardy, so I'm gonna have to have a higher constitution, right? So I feel like that's also another factor of this whole question of like, this can just be your character entirely before you've rolled stats, before you've chosen a class, like all that stuff.
well, yeah, like there's the race I made, the Ocean Nomads. I've been like doing some work on them, and last night I decided on having +2 strength, +1 constitution for them, because they're essentially sailors, with the exception of they don't use boats so much as they just walk across the waves. And they are very, very unsure of themselves on land. Like they see a building that has metal in it, and they're like, "What?" They they see a 2-story building, and they're like, "How did you make that? We use sea turtle shells for our like dinghies."
Yeah.
From one question that gets spawned out. So when you're answering this, where were you born? A single line is insufficient. It's where were you born and how did that forge you? How did that make you different? How does that impact upon who you are? Very
All right, in which case, slight bit of criticism. I would recommend writing that out as part of the question. Like, don't have the question just be then where are you born? Perhaps write out a paragraph and who were you born and how does that affect who and what you are.
Well, so I mean, I would say that the very simple where were you born thing then just develops into more questions. But I agree, yeah. It's one of those things where it's just it's also determines the level of dedication that the player is going to have to their character, I would say. Because if I ask you where were you born, you'll think of something different than my imaginary friend Joe Schmo, who will just go,
You're done with that.
yeah, exactly. But he'll just go like here. And then you go,
Joe Schmo sounds like a boring ass motherfucker.
That's the point. So and then if I prod him, he'll go, why don't you tell me, I guess? And then you go, okay.
Right.
I see where we're at. Okay.
important question. Who are or were your parents? Assuming that they are dead, then it's were, and if they're alive, then it's are. This is another important, fundamental foundation question in terms of your character. Your parents were poor. Okay, so then your character has probably grown up with the mentality of saving everything. Everything has value. Nothing is thrown away. Everything is recycled. Everything is repurposed. If you're poor, that's what you do. Trust me, I know. You try and make the most out of anything that you get, and you don't waste any money on frivolity. If you were born into a lavish, rich lifestyle, then you don't give a damn. You don't care about costs. You don't even think about how things get done. There's no resourcefulness because you don't need to be. They're all the resources you could possibly want.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at who are your parents, financial situations come into play. Then position within the kingdom comes into play, or position within the galaxy comes into play. Were they captains? Were they admirals? Were they unknowns? Were they scientists? Were they colonialists? Were they missionaries? Interesting ways in which you can look at your parents and then decide how do they influence you.
Going off of your criticism of the where were you born, I would even say that like this stuff would fall under where were you born, and the fact that he has taken who are your parents out and used that as its own question, then he could do the same thing for each of those things. So I agree with your criticism more so now, because now that I'm thinking about it, he could just put out a bunch of individual questions to get you thinking about all this shit.
Yeah, like, it doesn't need to be on this page, the 2 questions and the quote-unquote bonus.
Mm-hmm.
It can just be a page on where were you born and how did that affect your early life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Next, who and what were your parents and how did that affect your perception of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like definitely I would say that this 6 ultimate questions business is like I would say that you could narrow it down to 6, but I feel like having more there that are apparent for those who don't think of the additional questions would be beneficial.
Well, I remember in the beginning that he says 6 ultimate questions, and then he went on to say that there's actually more of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, absolutely that he himself knows that there are more, and he has been basically saying more that have become linked to each of these main questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's why I scrape by on that good old word "and."
Yeah.
Who are your parents and how?
Yeah, like, exactly. You can
still a question.
You can make them compound questions, right? Multiple parts in a single question, but it's one of those things where I don't know. I feel like it's not necessarily bad, right? Like to boil it down to 6 questions, it's not necessarily bad at all. It's just that I feel like having more detail in more questions, or just making the questions themselves more detailed, would be beneficial.
If I look at my parents, one was a teacher, an art teacher specifically, and so I grew up with lots of art stuff going on, lots of handicrafts. If you want custom-made Christmas wrapping paper made out of potato, I'm your man. On the other hand, my father was always trying to raise money to pay for the family to survive, and so I didn't really know him. And as a result, didn't get all that sports stuff and that kind of thing. So if you want somebody to catch a ball, best you throw it to someone who's actually capable of doing that. Mm-hmm. Again, small little details which start to make your character come alive and start to feel almost real. Mm-hmm. Almost real. That's the important thing, is they're not real, but they are almost real.
Well, I mean, they're real to you. There's the
science.
Yeah.
Fanaron.
I was gonna say, like, they've literally classified dreaming as a virtual reality, right? Like, it's just as real as you make it to be. I mean, obviously, don't go into the full psychosis of this is all real. Don't do that.
No, do it.
Well, no. So what I
Mazes and Monsters is a far out game.
That's what I mean. The taking it to the nth degree of everything that I do here is real and happening.
He's
right?
Pardue, the holy man.
That's what I mean by psychosis, because that is something that is like one of those it is definitely more of a fantastical notion of what can happen, but there are some people who could potentially, I guess, be more influenced by it.
Mm-hmm. I have actually had the express joy and pleasure of finding and reading like an old Christian textbook from the Satanic Panic.
Ooh, okay.
And I remember this was back in high school when I found this book. I didn't even play D&D at this point. And I remember flipping through it because I'm like, oh boy, this is gonna be stupid. And flipping through it, and they start talking about how it was about like Satanism in general, and how it can give people a sense of belonging, feeling like they belong to something greater, which is ironic.
I was gonna say
a Christian textbook.
Any religion can do that. Yep.
And literally any religion does that.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, and there are some people whose lives can be unfulfilling, and who escape via a sort of self-induced psychosis to escape that. And it's a picture of a dude ringing someone up at like a grocery line and saying like, oh, they may think I'm a loser, but in reality I'm Marduk, a 9th level wizard.
Oh my
And
god.
I remember seeing that illustration and thinking to myself like, wow, you have managed to be wrong and offensive on 2 levels.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
That's so stupid. I get okay. All right. So let me just re-clarify for anyone out there who might think that I might have said something along those lines. No. That's not what I think. You're not like going into a psychosis if you are proud of what your character does. Not necessarily going into a psychosis if you're proud of what your character in a D&D/RPG game in general does. You're just
really proud of my Cthulhu investigator for summoning Yogg-Sothoth.
There you go. I'm glad for you.
I am proud of myself for thinking of the idea of crawling underneath the beetles and teleporting between their shadows.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was something that I thought up and then like gave that idea to Boris because it makes sense for Boris to have it.
I was gonna say we can all
Boris pulled off some cool shit, and I felt very chuffed about it.
We can all distinguish that reality and what we do in our make-believe are different. And like there are certain circumstances where people cannot, and that is unfortunate, and I'm not trying to make fun of them. I'm not trying to like put them down at all. There are
You're
people
not disparaging the differently abled.
Exactly.
That being said, there was that one idiot on Twitter who said if you play GTA 5, you should be put on a watch list.
Yes, there are people out there who do believe this stuff, which is ridiculous, and I don't understand them.
And also, if you read Cthulhu, you're a racist.
Right, exactly. No. So,
I am concerned for the people who legitimately think like, oh well, if you play Dungeons and Dragons, then like you're thinking that like you're a devil or something, and it's like if you legitimately would ever think that someone is inducing or would be prone to enter a psychosis from this, it makes me concerned on how easily it is for you to enter a psychosis.
Exactly, and that's why I will preface it by saying psychosis for those who have the pre like existing conditions that make that a thing, right? Like because any Randy can go and play D&D, but there's a special kind of set of circumstances that will make that person believe that they are actually doing that stuff in real life, and that's unfortunate. And I hope for them that they get some help.
But either that, or if they're doing that and they feel that, and like they go through that and they can't get help, at least that they're, 1, having fun, and 2, not hurting anybody.
Yeah, as long as it's not destructive, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, if you're... as unfortunate as it is to say, if that's what happens to some people, here's hoping they're at least having fun with it.
Sure,
you know?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway. Slight mental talk, let's go.
Once you've answered the question about your parents in terms of what they did and the ramifications that you would have had as a result of growing up in that kind of environment, you can then answer this question, are they still alive? Now, I've done a whole video on why they should still be alive and why they should still be kicking. It gives you as the player so much more opportunity, so much more interesting factor. Hey, if your parents are still alive, and if Mummy is an important person within the court, well, maybe there's someone that you can go to for help. Maybe there's someone that you can go to for information. Building in parents who are still alive is, as far as I'm concerned, a tactical advantage if nothing else. Well, if you go to your parents and you say, we need accommodation for a week, Mummy. We have nowhere else to go.
And this is a great part of the video because it's all about like, I need to, Mom, Dad, we're hunting a dragon. We need a place to stay for the night.
Right, exactly.
It's great.
No, I am serious.
Right,
It's great.
And like,
no, I already told you I'm not working at the mill.
What I'll say is that it can be a tactical advantage, yes.
Yes, if you choose to do that.
It could also be a hindrance if you think about it. Like a very big hindrance.
Yep.
Yeah, your parents can essentially do the Toph Beifong to you and send mercenaries after you to bring you back.
Yeah, right.
Yep, that's true.
More than likely, the mother will say, no, come in, dear, come in, absolutely. You and your friends. I do wish you'd have better friends. They're such a bad influence on you. But all of you are welcome. Come in nonetheless. Yes. No, the mud on the floor is absolutely fine. I'll just scrub it out over the next few weeks. It's not a problem. I like cleaning. Yes. Oh.
Yikes, dude. All right, okay. All right, you're making a lot of assumptions here now.
I'm really beginning to see why he left.
Yeah, dude.
Ooh.
Like,
r/raised by narcissists.
You're going to eat everything in the house. No, that's fine. Good. Yeah, sorry, I might be projecting here.
You know what? There you go.
It's super good.
Self-aware.
I'm glad I remembered this one.
The idea is that you want to use your parents for narrative reasons, for tactical reasons, for supply, for information. There's a whole worth of stuff that comes with living relatives rather than with dead ones. Dead ones give you a bit of a cliched backstory, and I think it's
Can like they don't have to. I mean, it is definitely going to be categorized under the cliche of dead parents, but again, you can make it unique enough.
Yeah, see, the thing is, when you say that, like, your dead parents can give you a cliched background, and I just thought, how about undead parents, where it's like you were born of humans, and then they got like turned into vampires or something.
Ooh,
and then they became assholes because of it or something.
Yeah.
So you could have an even more awkward family reunion.
Hello, these are my friends. They have blood. Don't drink them.
Don't drink it, please. And that would be really, really funny to be like, and like, who knows? Maybe it's like Strahd and Barovia, but they're not bastards to the people there, and they know that they're vampires, and they do like the Cullen thing where they drink animal blood, or they drink the blood of people from like an enemy nation or something. They don't care,
exactly,
and they actually like take care of the people that they like oversee and lord over.
A blood tax. Everyone has to donate
some bloodletting.
Like you like cut your hand, and then like you squeeze a bit of blood out, and then the cleric will like heal you or something, and then just everybody collects a bit of blood from around town. And it's like, okay, and then everybody likes them. It's like, hey, these are my parents. They're vampires.
I was gonna say quite literally.
Make a big deal about it.
They quite literally are a supernatural force that keeps them safe. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like,
so that would be really interesting. Actually,
yeah, no, that'd be cool. So yeah, I mean. Then but
they are dead. So.
Technically dead.
I will admit, whenever I ask someone like about their character and they mention that their parents are dead, I will admit it does cause me to stiffen a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
And I go like, how?
It's one of those things where the circumstance has to,
I think if you want to do the your parents are dead kind of thing, or you don't really want to think about your parents, a better alternative would be to say, I never knew them. Because
they could be dead to you, quote unquote.
Yeah,
right?
like you just like you were you were orphaned, but they're not dead. They're still around, and who knows? That's still giving the DM the ability to be like, okay, let's throw this character in. Turns out he's your dad. What? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you can have that.
And like
Or,
go on.
I had a character where the one I was talking about with the Pact of the Archfey, the young
right,
character.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be like that character wandered off into the woods and was lost for like 30 years. And so who knows, maybe like my parents might still be alive, but they may have moved along. They may have moved. They've moved on with their lives, hopefully. And maybe they have new kids. Maybe I have new brothers and sisters. And so not knowing them or not knowing where they are, that's a very good alternative to they're dead. Because unless it's something that you purposefully put into your character, when you say my parents are dead, it can sometimes feel like instead of saying they're dead for a reason, it can sometimes be they're dead because I don't want to have to put any thought into them.
Yeah.
If you chose to, if that's what you're doing, sometimes it can be that.
Alternatively, you can make characters whose parents are dead for story-related reasons who aren't edgy. There is an idea I have that I've been wanting to play for Hexblade Warlock, whose his patron is literally like the souls of his ancestors on both sides of his family that live on inside his sword and sometimes give him guidance on like ways to not dishonor the family and to compose yourself in a way befitting a young gentleman of this household.
Yeah, totally.
And to not die.
Yeah, so like
produce
you can
an heir before you die.
Yeah.
Pass that sword on, dude, because otherwise we're all fucked.
You've got your horny uncle in the sword. It's like, hey, you should talk to her, and it's like, no, Phil, I'm here to have
busy
a
right
meal
now.
and continue on. Yes, but the sword must fall into hands when you die. And going into battle tomorrow. I want an insurance policy. It's like, no. And even if we do, I'm gonna put you in the drawer. Oh, come on!
God. That's awful. I love it.
All the other spirits hate him.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. That's great. I love it. I hate it.
Anyway.
A weak solution, and you're going to see, we're going to ask a question a little bit later on that's going to hopefully solve that conundrum for you if you are the one who automatically has dead parents. So let's go to the next point here. Possibly. Past. Now, this defines your character in more ways than where you were born and who your parents were. That is, what were they doing before session 1 and why did they leave? What were they doing before session 1? Why is that important to know? You might have a session 0, so then it would be what would they be doing before session 0? What was your character doing just before they decided, hey, I'm going to go on wild adventures? If you're playing in a sci-fi campaign and you're a member of a crew, oftentimes you didn't have much of a choice. The ship went into battle and you were dragged along with it. If, however, you are starting off as just that little character in a tavern somewhere, dear Lord, please not. But if you are starting off as that character who just stumbles into adventure, or you're a womp rat shooter who lives on the back end of a planet in the back end of space, or you're a peasant in a field trying to cover yourself in mud to make sure that you don't get mistaken for a noble. Whatever it is that you're doing, however it is that you're doing it, why or what, let's start with what were you doing before you started? Now, that's a tricky question. You can't have been the head of an assassin's guild and the murderer of thousands of people if you're starting off at a low level. A lot of role-playing systems use levels to determine the experience and capacity of your character. If you are starting at a low level, it means that you haven't yet started your career of murdering millions and millions of people, or you haven't yet started your career of being the greatest assassin on Earth, who then suddenly suffers from amnesia and goes back to being a low-level character.
Oh, God. Oh, that would be terrible. Yeah, that's definitely very important because like you have to set those expectations because that could be your goal because I assume we'll get into like future stuff when we get into future stuff, but that can be your goal for your character because of their past, because of wants and desires. But definitely, if you're making a backstory, you can't be the best thing ever because you haven't started. And even if you start at a higher level, you probably still aren't the best thing ever, but you have some status in some respect, I would hope.
That's one of the things that I really like in Call of Cthulhu, because since it's skill-based and not level-based, they actually go over like they describe the actual like attributes like strength, constitution, dex, and they describe intelligence. And if you have a really, really high intelligence or a really, really high education, you can make your character, like if you make him like old enough, or hell, even if you make him young enough, maybe he's a prodigy or some sort, you can, if you have high enough intelligence and education, you can start out with like a PhD. Like your character has a PhD.
Yep.
Which is super cool. I like that. Now, it makes a bit more sense if you make him like 30 or 40 or whatever. But again, prodigy kind of thing. Because player character, you're meant to be special. So you can totally do that. And I really like that about Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, it's definitely, it opens it up so that you can be whatever you actually want to be in the limitations of it being the real world, quote unquote, right? But
yeah, in D&D that doesn't really work, unfortunately.
Yeah, like you could do the plot thing of Amnesia, I suppose. But I would highly recommend against it. Well, no, I wouldn't though. That's the thing.
Amnesia's this kind of thing where it's like, has it gone full circle yet? Because some things go full circle.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Definitely, it is. So I'll use the example, and I will use Critical Role, and I will try not to spoil too much, but I will spoil a little bit. So be aware of those listening. It'll probably be like 5 minutes or so. Mollymock.
You can always put up like a thumbnail or something.
Mollymock has a sort of amnesia. You learn, and he has this past that he is not aware of, does not want any part of, right? Because he himself now is his own person. He's been living as who he is now, and whoever he was before, he doesn't know them. He doesn't know the people from that. He doesn't want a part of it, which was incredibly interesting, and can be pulled off if you can pull that off. And if your DM can pull off that kind of thing of getting you intrigued in what your life was beforehand by giving you these little hints, and not outright, giving you everything right away, obviously. But so I actually wouldn't say that amnesia is a bad idea.
You just gotta be good.
It's just one of those things that it's hard to pull off.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So you just like, if you want to try it, absolutely go for it, right? It's gonna be one of those things where you gotta have that good duo of yourself and your DM to make it work out.
All of that kind of stuff just doesn't hold water for me. If, however, you're starting the game where you are at higher level, maybe the DM has decided, right, we're going to play level 10 characters, I want you to go and fight angels and demons. Now you are free to write the greatest story of the greatest assassin ever to have lived and have slain dragons in your sleep. You can go mad.
At 10th level? But
maybe
I get what you mean.
Young ones, maybe.
Right. Yeah, true. You're
eggs
baby
don't,
slaughter.
eggs don't really fight back.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they were doing beforehand. On the other hand, if you are starting at low level, if your game doesn't have levels necessarily, and you want to have the experience of someone who's a regular Joe suddenly becoming an amazing Josephine, well, this is the story that you are going to be trying to answer. What were they doing beforehand? And it's not just a case of plumber. He was a plumber before he started, playing.
It's not just a case of plumber. It's just I don't know why that hit
sentence.
me. It just hit me the way you delivered it. It was great.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Dragons. It might be that he was a plumber. But why was he a plumber? Well, because his parents were plumbers. Okay, so he'd taken up plumbing because Dad plumbed Mum and created him, and plumbing is in the family. Plumbing. It's a remarkable job. It's needed. Everyone needs good plumbing. Unless, of course, you are in a primitive society where it hasn't been invented yet, in which case the role of plumber might be redundant. But progressive, but redundant. So plumbing is what he was doing beforehand. Why was he... Why did he not go on adventures beforehand? Well, because he had family responsibilities. Dad wasn't as good as he used to be. His piffle valve was leaking and he couldn't get a good seal and those kinds of things. So he needed a youngster to come and help him and, make sure to tighten his nuts and stuff like that. So that's exactly...
Yeah, no, I think he was going for that.
Oh. I thought you had a point. Now I realize.
He was just saying,
now I realize what you were saying.
What my character was doing was helping out good old Dad in the plumbing business. We were fairly successful, as a matter of fact. We were starting to make a little coin. We were middle-income individuals. Let's be honest, plumbers make a fortune. We were middle-upper-income individuals, and life was good. Life was good. Okay, great. Why'd you leave, then? Why did you give up? Why did you stop? Why did you change?
Goddamn
now,
defective
oftentimes
wrenches.
in a film we call this...
Yeah,
I am on my way to that company, and they will know my wrath.
So even with this, I would say that you could still have that kind of thing in your background of like there wasn't a death that happened or any of that kind of stuff. And so they are leaving now, like at the start of the game, they're leaving whatever they are doing because they're on their way somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. The only issue there is why are you trained as what you are in your class, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, what you can do for in the instance of plumber, that seems more of a Call of Cthulhu type situation in which I would go.
Artificers.
Okay. Well,
like, you ever heard of a pipe bomb, my guy?
True. What I meant, I suppose, is specifically plumber. For that, I would say it would be more of a Call of Cthulhu situation in which they find whatever horror is going on as
it's in the pipes.
Yeah, it's in the pipes, right? Like you can do that. And yeah, for the equivalency.
Clearly, you've never heard of my man Mario.
Right, exactly. Well, yeah, dude. That's right. He was plumbing that bathtub, and then he got sucked into the pipe with his brother Luigi from the Super Mario Super Show. Everyone knows that.
Dude, that's Paisanos.
Yeah, Paisanos. Anyway,
love that show.
It's great. I need to actually watch it. I've seen some of the clips.
It was, dude, that and Acme, like,
Yep. So, but yeah, if we want to do the equivalency in D&D, yeah, Artificer would work. But I guess what I mean specifically is background trade. If you do a background trade and you didn't, like, you would have to come up with reasons why you were also a class in that case, right? If you're a quote-unquote plumber, or the equivalency being quote-unquote, I don't know, for a D&D, I mean, D&D is this weird thing where you can have many different sets of technology, so plumber could very well be a thing.
It could work, it's just, why does your plumber know how to use a sword?
Right, exactly.
Cast magical spells.
Another main issue is that level of technology that you mentioned, Alejo.
Yes.
And I understand that we are getting way too myopic on his example of a plumber. Because it doesn't matter that he said the word plumber.
Right. It's just
that the character has a profession.
Yes.
But ever since he did say the word plumber, I've been sort of like, I've had this point and not mentioned it. But like, plumbing didn't become common until like after the Tudor period. It was more in Victorian London,
Mhm.
which is defined as like the 1820s
Yeah.
and onward or so.
Mhm.
Whereas the Tudor period is the area from the 14th century to the 18th century. So
Yes. Yeah.
it
400 years.
ended. Yeah, it ended in like I think it was 1715 was when the Tudor period ended.
Okay.
And granted, there are some modern comforts that are present in fantasy role-playing games,
Yes.
like pockets. Pockets did not exist. Those were another invention of Victorian England.
Yeah.
Um, Stuff like that. Cotton clothing wasn't particular. Well, no, cotton clothing was common. But yeah, fucking.
It's
Mm,
it is this weird amalgamation of different time periods that is
Mhm.
D&D, especially with something like Waterdeep. Oh my
Mm.
god, Waterdeep! Like, if you've looked into the Heist of Waterdeep or whatever it is,
Mhm.
it just like my brain goes ah, ha ha ha, in some cases, but uh it doesn't mean that it's bad or anything. It's just one of those things that's kind of
yeah,
confusing.
Yeah.
Because you can't
yeah.
really
It's like,
place.
oh yeah, we have these pipes, and it's like, why?
Yeah. It's like, okay, I guess we're modernized fantasy, but not too modern because we only use swords.
Although, clocks existed in the Tudor period.
Okay.
Yeah, they weren't um oftentimes typical of like the clock that we know of.
Hmm.
They relied less on like a circular method of telling time, and it was more like a bar that swiveled back and forth.
Oh, okay.
Each one of those was a second, and then they had like weights that you could bring out farther and farther to adjust for different times of the year, having different lengths of days. So you had
Oh.
long seconds and short seconds.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm.
But anyway, um,
Yeah, piping, quote unquote, for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a like widespread thing, I assume.
yeah,
And
yeah, it was more in monasteries so that priests would know exactly when to pray.
right. Okay. Um. So going back to what I was saying, you could have your quote unquote profession person going at the moment at the start of the adventure. You could have them be a part of this caravan of people that are going to a certain place. Um, but again, how do they know how to do the things that
Oh,
are a class? And unless you've considered that, they dabbled. I suppose they took some starter courses in their local wizards college
Mhm.
as a side thing, right?
Murder 101.
Murder 101. They decided that the streets are a little dangerous, so they got some guard training. Maybe they were a former guard before they started to do whatever profession it is that they are now trying to be a part of. But so they have that kind of training, and then they're going into the adventure, and then because of the adventures, things that are going on with the caravan slash whatever it is that they're traveling towards slash whatever, if it's not travel, if they went to this place just to try to do their business, then they go into, oh, okay, so this inciting incident is because of the adventure and how they have been able to help people, and maybe they find that as more fulfilling, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe they really just want to go back, but now they're driven to do the right thing in this
oh,
situation.
hello.
Hey.
Oh, have I been talking without you here?
Yes.
Yep.
Cool. Where did you not hear me? What?
Boo had just finished a point, and I was submitting a quick correction that the Tudor time period was actually from 1485 to 1603.
Okay.
But yeah, we talked about the weird mishmash of technologies that was
Right.
going on,
Mhm.
and yeah,
Well, at least you heard it on your side.
Mhm.
I didn't.
Well,
Oh, great.
the lag is real bad.
Oh, good. Great. Good.
Real bad.
Yep. It's just.
Donate to our Patreon so Alejo can get better internet.
It would benefit the podcast greatly, I would say.
Yeah, and hey, you'd be able to upload and render faster.
That's true. I would like to upload faster.
Yep.
Anyway, so what I was saying, in the span of, unfortunately, I'll be repeating myself. But the profession, the person with the profession going on the adventure, basically you figure out how they have their knowledge, perhaps being a former guard, perhaps dabbling on the side of being a wizard, and then or a trainee magic user, I suppose, and then you go on the adventure, quote unquote, if you're traveling or if you go to a specific place to do your business, get caught up in whatever inciting incident is there. Maybe it makes you more fulfilled. Maybe you're more dragged into the situation and you can't necessarily go back to your former life just yet. It could be a myriad of other things, or you just give up at that point, and then maybe there's some inter-character things to try to convince your character that no, this is something that you should be a part of because you handled yourself well, right? And you could help us with future things like this, or you just give up on the character and just have them go back home. Which I mean, that's not usually the case. A lot of people don't do that kind of stuff because they want to have this character be a part of the adventure. But I'm not going to say that it's not entirely possible for you to then go, this isn't the right character for this.
Yeah. See, now my thing that while you were just going through that, I just had this idea.
Yeah.
I just had this vision of your character, of course, being a plumber, and you're down in the sewers and you're like mucking shit out of pipes, and over the course of doing that, you wind up finding like a hexblade sword where it's like the original owner was like, okay, get this shit away from me, I don't want this is a bad thing, I don't want it. And then you go in the sewer, you're doing your job, and then you find it's like, hey, dig me out of the shit. I'll give you magic, please.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that could be a whole thing too. Absolutely.
Or like you're digging, same thing, you're plumber in the sewers and you're working your way through a pipe, and then like the pipe collapses beneath you, you fall down into a pit, and there's an eldritch horror like buried in shit. It's like, dig me out, I'll give you stuff, please. Same thing.
Yeah, it's just whatever your warlock thing would be.
Yeah,
totally. So yeah, let's continue on.
Yeah.
This is the point of no return. This is the point where the character irrevocably decides to go down a path, and that path will lead them to glory, fame, and fortune, or death and destruction and pain and suffering. Doesn't really matter. The point is that this is where your character decides, you know what, plumbing is actually not for me. Being elbow deep in the waste of other human beings whilst trying to fix their pipes because the idiots have tried to flush a goblin down the loo, just not for me. No, I'm going off. I'm going to go and seek my fortunes elsewhere. I think it's much more entertaining to be shot at, mauled, maimed, tortured, and otherwise destroyed with magic than being knee-deep in shit. That's pretty much the plumber's life.
Reasonable.
Or not. I mean, you've got an assistant for that, really. Anyway, why did your character leave? What's the point of your character leaving? That is something that you have to decide. And you could be, oh, well, they didn't have a choice. They stepped on a floorboard and they fell down a tunnel into a strange world. That takes choice away from them. Or what it's going to do is going to inspire your future. So whatever you choose now, you need to make sure that your character either doesn't want to come back to this, so that's why they left, because they want to get rid of it, they want to be I don't want to be any part of it, I don't want to be like my father and mother at all, I am no longer ready to be a plumber, I want to be something else. I am leaving. Perhaps it was a fight, perhaps the parents wanted rent, perhaps they no longer wanted their son or daughter to lounge around on the couch, perhaps it was a discovery of a door in a wall and they decided to go through it one day because they were feeling miserable. Perhaps it was simply because there was an advertisement in the local newspaper saying looking for strong, tough plumber-like people to come on an adventure of aquatic magnitude.
Maybe you're just really determined to find your 10mm socket wrench. And you're like, hey Jim Bob, I'll be back to help you with that shit pipe. And just a second, I need to go grab the socket wrench, and that was the last time you saw him.
You went out for cigarettes and then
I'm your assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Legend has it your assistant is still waiting to this very day.
And you know what? The assistant got a good deal out of that. He got a whole business.
It's true. Yeah, he took over from where you were.
It doesn't matter. You need to decide. Did they leave
Legend says that Jim Bob then hired Bob Jim.
voluntarily, or did they leave against their will? Did they leave by accident? So,
yeah, I've realized now that I was just talking about what he's talking about now. So hey, there we go.
What are the three? One of those three combinations did they go through in order to get them to going on adventure number one? Because, okay, firstly, it's going to talk about your future. Secondly, it's going to talk about why your character stays with the party. And that is something that is very, very important and often forgotten by a lot of good players. Why your character sticks with the particular party. If they knew them as friends and you've built that into the backstory, that's fantastic. But sometimes we don't. Sometimes we go in cold turkey. So then we look to our future by answering questions about our character's past. So they have left for one of the reasons, by choice, by accident, or by other. I've gone completely blank. So they have left for one of those reasons that I listed 5 seconds ago in the video. Go look for it. I'm sorry. I'm in a good mood. Right. What did they leave behind them, however? What did they leave behind? So if they left in anger and rage, you know, they left because of emotional reasons. That's the third one. If they left because of that, what did they leave behind? Did they leave their parents behind? Yes, they did. Well, their parents are plumbers, so, well, did they leave them under good circumstances or bad circumstances? Those are questions that you've already answered. Now you can say, what did they leave behind? They left behind an inheritance. They left behind a fiancé. They left behind a vast fortune. They left behind destruction, hatred, and angst. They left all... Doesn't matter. What do they leave behind? Now, why is this part of the future? Why is this part of this particular category? And there's a very simple reason for that. This is stuff that your GM can start to use to help to tell your backstory better. If you left behind a dog, or you left behind your favorite cloak, or you left behind your fiancé, or you left behind whatever, the GM can now have that as a tool to say, all right, well, you get a message from your mother. Your father is incredibly ill. He... unfortunately, had an incident with a pipe, and it's left him unable to work. We're desperate for money. Please come back. Love, Mum. P.S. Don't bring your friends.
I was hoping he was going to go into the incident with the pipe. Damn it.
He was reaching for a pipe, and it turned out it was a mimic.
Oh, shit.
Ooh, that would be really cool.
The pipe mimics.
Watch out for
Something
them.
along those lines. Wow, there's an adventure just waiting to happen. You need to go back and you need to respond. Now, if you left because of emotional issues, here's an opportunity for your character to explore those emotional opportunities, to unpack the anger, the angst, the frustration, the loss, the depression,
socket wrenches.
those kinds of typical family issues. Or perhaps if you left on good terms, it's an emotional return to spend the last few moments that your character possibly can with your father or your mother or your grandmother or your dog or your tortoise, it doesn't matter. All of that kind of stuff. So you can then really play into that.
I just want to say we haven't been pausing at this point because it's all good. This is
this is a good video.
Yeah, we haven't been pausing too much. We've just been kind of expounding when we can, but
yeah.
I want to say, like, this has been very, very good so far. I'm very happy.
So by deciding what you left behind, what it's also going to do is it's going to help you to decide what you want to do. Do you want to return home? Do you want to return to that space? So you accidentally left. You pulled an Alice in Wonderland and you stepped through the looking glass. It was the wormhole in space that sucked you to the other side of the galaxy. Do you want to return home? Is that your goal? Do you want to reconcile with your parents? Do you want to make sure they remain dead? What do you want? And back.
Okay, before we go to, does anybody notice the blurring every now and again? Is that just me?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I've seen it a couple times.
All right, because my eyes, like, I just keep blinking, and I'm just like, wait, what? Every now and again.
The first time I saw it, I'm like, oh, was that a like a video quality drop?
Yeah.
Or if it was in the
Okay.
actual video. But yeah, no, I've seen it.
All right, okay. I just wanted to make sure because
You're not going crazy.
Starting.
Perhaps it might be to have nothing to do with your past. That's perfectly valid as well, because you've answered all of those questions about your past. So we have this idea of this very complex character who's got a birthplace that we can see the influence on them. They've got all kinds of familial history, which again allows us to get insight into who they are and who potentially they could be, whether they are starting to emulate like their parents. Perhaps you might have the greatest barbarian, but he just can't help himself. When he sees a leaky pipe, he goes over and he fixes it quickly. He's always got a wrench on hand, or in his backpack or his loincloth, wherever you might wrench, if you're a barbarian. You know, there are all kinds of things that come out when you answer these kinds of questions. So when you answer, what do you want? This is often the most difficult question for a player to answer. What does your character want? Oh, my character wants fame and fortune and be a hero. Well, maybe. There are a few people who want fame and fortune and to be a hero. For sure, there absolutely are. But there's more to it than that. Could it be to be loved? Could it be to be reconciled? You can think about all kinds of things. And when you start answering with the word I want to prove that there is more to me than fixing pipes. I want to prove that I'm better than my father. And I want to prove that life doesn't just have to be accepting what you are given. I want to prove all of that to my parents because they told me that I couldn't do it.
So, not to take away from this, but you could still say he wants to do that, he wants to do this. Like it's definitely like, yes, it makes it more personal to you, I suppose, if you are now in that character's mindset, in order to answer these questions. But even so, you can still be in the mindset and still say he, they, she.
I will say though, if you're looking to use D&D as almost like a form of, I guess you could call it therapy, a way to more help you characterize yourself, I suppose, and organize your thoughts and feelings. If you want to make a character that is based off of like your feelings about one particular matter, in order to help you explore those via multiple different ways, using I for a character like that could absolutely be really beneficial to you.
Absolutely, yeah. I know I've said it before, but touching upon it again, D&D can help you work through a lot of shit. RPGs in general, excuse me, can help you work through a lot of shit. It has been documented. People have done it. You can find examples.
That's why we're talking about plumbers right now.
That's why we're talking about plumbers. Yeah,
they work through shit.
One might almost say that we are plumbing the depths of our psyche.
Pipe
humor.
Now that's an interesting
good
thing that the character wants to prove. So many things. They want to prove all kinds of things. How are they going to do it? So what this does, this simple question, this simple question, what it does is it should help to define how your character acts during the rest of the game. They want to prove that you don't have to accept what you're given. Well, that means they might rally against villains.
Actually, I'll let him finish this off before I bring this up.
To go, now you are where I want you. You will never escape. I will prove to you that I am not controlled by what I am given. I will fight against you. Interesting. Something to think about. So when you answer these questions honestly, and when you answer them as I generally find it's a lot easier. Sometimes you do feel a little bit like an idiot when you're doing it. You're like, well, I want to do this, I want to do that. But push through that. And you will find on the other side that you go, wow, was that me speaking? Or was that the character speaking? If it was me speaking, am I doing it in real life? Am I proving things in real life? Is that really what I feel about my parents? Interesting. Perhaps it's not about you at all, and that you are creative and you can pull these things forward and make logical decisions. Hopefully these questions will help you do just that. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you like me revisiting some of these older topics that we spoke about in the past, bringing them to life, giving them a new twist, perhaps a new angle, adding some more information to them? let me know. If there's any one way that I can know, and that's with your comments down below. Until next time, however, I wish you and yours the happiest of playing.
Good video, guy.
Thanks, guy.
Oh wait,
hang on.
Oh no. Oh,
We never talk anymore, father. And mother just lies around all day. I think she's depressed. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't subscribe to this idea that once a family is dead, they're dead. I think there's more to life than just being a bunch of bones in the ground. I really do. I think I shall ring the bell and summon up Great Aunt Tallulah. I think she'll know what to do.
So
nice.
it reminded me. Good video. I'd give that a solid 95.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's a great video. I'm quite happy about that. So it's a difference from what we have covered
reminds
recently.
me of this bit from Avatar. I imagine this as the DM yelling at the player who always wants to have dead parents.
Yeah. Let me bring that up. Yeah, it's quite literally time for you to look inward and begin asking yourself
Who
the
are
big
you?
question.
And what do you want?
Yes. This I feel like something that should definitely be stated is that you, as a player, slash as anyone, you could use this and definitely talk to your DM with it. Like use it to bounce ideas back and forth. That way you get like this could be during your session 0. One, you get to inform your DM at the same time as you come to these revelations, right? That way it's easier to just have them use this information, plus they can sprinkle in like little things of like, oh yeah, and if you did this, then I mean we could do something here, right? Like you can have it be that kind of creative exercise where it's still your character and all of that, and you know your DM isn't making you roll on a table and and picking things out for you, but you can literally just have these questions answered by your DM as well, so that you can better make it fit. That way you don't have to run into the issue of, I want to have there be a lot of owlbears in the area, but there are no owlbears that are in the area. The other thing that for like, how do I put this? Nope, it's gone. Cool. Yep.
Intermission?
Yeah. Good time for intermission.
Maybe during the intermission you'll be able to pick it up.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll be right back.
Yeah. All right, I'll be right back.
Anyway, welcome back. We've learned more forbidden knowledge.
Yeah.
It has-
There's a lot of forbidden knowledge on the internet. You'll
It's
find.
definitely not enriched my life, I can tell you that much.
Well, I mean, forbidden knowledge doesn't usually.
Does not spark joy.
So we're gonna move on here, and we're going to watch a Seth Skorkowski video.
Ooh, we might have a rare night where both videos are good.
Exactly.
We will. It is. I have seen it.
Hello,
Skorkowski.
So, let us get into character backstory playing RPGs, brought to us by our lovely friend that we obviously know.
Personally,
Seth Skorkowski. So, here we go.
And today we're going to be starting something a little bit new. Most of my videos have been directed towards game masters with various tips and reviews, but today I'm going to be talking to players. And to begin this new player series, we're going to start off by discussing character backstories. In tabletop role-playing games, the game master handles the world, populating it with interesting places and colorful characters, while the players are each in charge of their own individual characters. Backstories are where we answer all the important questions about this character. Who are they? Where are they from? What do they value? Who do they value? What is their goal? What is their fear? And so on. Now, I'm not going to discuss how a player should go about choosing all of those individuals.
I have to say, I'm glad it's not just fear. It's almost like there's a lot of other factors that go into what characters are like.
Individual things, as much as I'm going to discuss how a player should approach backstories in general. That way they're easier to fit and to incorporate into a campaign. Since starting my channel off, there have been two big gripes that I have noticed when it comes to backstories. One of them is players saying that my game master is not incorporating my backstory enough. And the other complaint is game masters saying that my players are not giving me workable backstories. And while those are both certainly gripes worth having, my gut instinct, my knee-jerk reaction whenever I see either of those complaints is, well, that's likely your fault. So any players out there that are wanting to have origin stories that their game masters can then weave into their campaign, or game masters who are wanting to help your players craft backstories that you're able to use very easily in your campaign, this video is for you. And players, the first thing that you need to do before you even write down the first word of your character backstory is to verify the game master's plans. First, see how much they intend on using backstory in this campaign. Just because your last game master did, or your favorite streaming celebrity game master does, or even the same game master did it in their previous campaign, it doesn't mean that the game master is planning to incorporate backstories in this campaign all that much.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you're going from a homebrew to like a module, right? Especially then it's just like, well, will my backstory matter more or less in this?
Exactly.
Because it very well could. You can still incorporate that kind of shit into a module, depending on how they put their spin on it. But
now, Alejo.
Yeah, hi.
It sounds an awful lot to me like you're saying that clear and open and honest communication and setting up expectations is like important for D&D.
I don't know how you could. I have no idea how you could interpret that from what I said.
I don't know if I'm about it.
Oh, well.
I prefer to keep the players guessing.
Ah.
Yeah.
There can be a few reasons for this, but the simple truth is that if your game master has never told you that backstories are going to be greatly used in the campaign, then you can't blame that game master for your just assuming that they would if you never asked them. Now, game masters, if one of your players expresses interest in weaving backstories into the campaign, you had better pay attention to this. This is a request by your players of something that they would like, so you're going to have to address that with them. Give them either what they want, or you're going to have to give them a good reason why you're not able to do it. Now, you might not be able to tell them what that reason is before the campaign starts. It might be one of those surprise campaigns that's going to become obvious once it is, but you still are going to have a discussion with them about it at some point or another. But just to ignore your players is to fail them. Next.
Yeah! Good. Please don't ignore your players. God fucking damn it.
Yeah, no. So, yeah, it's very important to have that kind of a thing. Like, if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and an easy example would be if you're playing in a setting that wouldn't allow for your backstory to make any sense, well, you kind of need to ask beforehand. If your backstory is very setting dependent, then you need to see if the setting is, can work with it.
Yeah, because like our last example of Plumber Man. If Plumber Man is being put into every game that you play, Plumber Man might not fit in some places.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Next, when talking to your game master, verify that the backstory is going to fit into the campaign.
There you go.
What sort of world is this taking place in? Is the character and backstory even appropriate for it? If we're going to be in some sort of water world, then your desert nomad character might not work for it. Verify if it will before you get your heart set on the character. This is something that's going to make everyone's time much easier. If you have a character backstory.
There we go. Your desert nomad could totally work. You just got to have it be in this water world. You find him on like a tiny little sand island, and he's fucking batshit, from the heat. It's like
vast desert.
It's the greatest desert in the world.
I've not had anything to drink in years. It's like
I can see just clearly enough.
That'd be great.
you must flee onto the island, onto safety. The ocean wishes to consume you.
You were gonna say, Aiden.
Yeah, Aiden.
Oh, I was gonna say, when you want to play a desert nomad character, but you're in an ocean world, that's when you play the Martabi.
Huh?
Oh, that's my ocean nomads.
Oh, that one. Right.
Mm.
Yes. Yeah. You know.
Story that fits into the campaign. Now, Game Masters, this means it's now your responsibility to give your players a direction to shoot. If you don't give your players a request or a direction, then you can't blame them for making backstories that don't fit. Never just assume that they're going to somehow know what's going to fit if you didn't tell them. Now, players, if you're wanting elements and characters from your character's past to have an active involvement in your character's future, well, where they might show back up or resurface at any time in any game or anything like that, it's probably best that you choose an origin from within the campaign map. For example, let's say your Game Master plans on your campaign taking place on this map. Now, if the Game Master agrees, your character could come from the faraway land of somewhere or another. But if your character's from a distant land, that's not going to be the centerpiece of this campaign. The ease in which your Game Master might be able to bring in elements or characters from your character's past is going to be significantly harder because they're from somewhere far away. So instead of doing that, you might consider coming up with a character origin that comes from somewhere within the game map that the Game Master has made. You might point at this part of the map and say, hey, what's this? And your Game Master might say, oh, well, this is the city of Dicelick, and here's all the great information about it. And then you might say, maybe, but how about here? And your Game Master says, oh, well, that's the coastal city of Slydom, and here's all the great stuff about that. And then you might say, nah, that really doesn't work for what I'm thinking. How about here? Then your Game Master says, well, I really haven't done anything there other than just name it. So tell me, what is it that you're looking for? And I can either point you to a place on my map that does fit that criteria, or I can make that city more like what it is that you want. That way you can come from that city and it fits that idea. This serves a couple great purposes. One, you as a player are becoming more actively involved in the campaign world rather than just being a total outsider to it. Game Masters love it if you show interest in the game world, so this is going to earn you a few kudos. Two, it gives you as a player a sense of ownership. This is my city. You can see it right here on the map. Maybe we'll visit, or hopefully we're not going to visit it because I'm not allowed back there. But also three, all the characters and the elements from your character's backstory are going to be much easier for the Game Master to incorporate naturally because the NPCs that are from that land are all from somewhere in the campaign map. They're somewhere that the campaign is taking place rather than all coming from some distant lands far away. So about the distant lands far away thing, that's obviously in some instances like let's say a space kind of campaign, right? Some instances that's going to have to be the case, right? But you have the ability of travel and stuff. And I would say even in something like just a D&D campaign, you could still have that, and like if your DM is willing to have it be like maybe they have an embassy, right? Like from that faraway land, or there's immigration from there to here that is happening more often because of whatever reason, or like you could set things up so that it can be easier for your DM, I think. In order to incorporate that faraway land kind of thing. You could even, I don't know, with their permission, kind of create stuff in that faraway land that they could then use for that faraway land for future stuff. If they want to perhaps like flesh out that continent or whatever. So, I mean, not to say that he's wrong or anything. Absolutely, he's entirely correct that this would be easier if you're a part of that game world. But I gotta say, like, it's not always going to be the case, and you could still, like I said, make it much easier for the DM to just like make it so you can incorporate all that backstory stuff into the world without having to really
rely on it being on the other continent.
Yeah, and I mean, when you put out the embassy idea, that's actually a really great idea. I would have never even thought of that. That's great.
That's actually really good.
Like, and you can have that in like the capital city or whatever. It doesn't have to be in the city where you live.
Yeah, absolutely. I that's like the first thing that I think of when I think of like, because NPCs in real life are a thing, right? Like,
yeah. Then you can have diplomatic immunity go on.
you can have
It'll
stuff
be
like
great.
that. Yeah, I've seen so many examples of embassies being used in other kinds of media that I'm like, yeah, embassies are a good idea. Let's use embassies.
Masters, when your players start coming up on where their characters came from, when villages and cities and countries that they all originated from, you should provide them with a map if at all possible. Give them the world that you want them to populate. If you simply just leave it up to them with no direction at all, once again, you're not going to be able to blame them from just choosing a direction of their own because you didn't help them find one. Next, player.
That thing about the map is hard. Be prepared for
Yeah,
map.
it can be very hard.
Be prepared for map troubles. Oh man. Like having made my initial map of Agris, and then like talking to friends who knew more about like geography, and then going,
and how things actually form.
Yeah, and then they're going, this is wrong here, and like you can have it be this way, but like you know, if you have the wind coming from this direction, that means this happens, and then the streams, there's not really a divergence here. It's more just
there's no way in hell that side of the mountain is the forested one.
Exactly, right? Like stuff like that.
The thing with that is that whenever that pops up, I just kind of ignore that, and because it's a fantasy world, and I'm just like, Now I don't have like a volcano next to snow or anything like that.
Oh, you could.
Yeah, you can, actually.
I mean,
Japan
like an active erupting volcano.
I mean, again, you could.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're not going to make diametrically opposed things near each other.
Yeah, it's not Minecraft.
Right,
you know?
Exactly, yeah.
And so whenever I have that thought, I'm just like, it's a fantasy world. Let's just roll with it. Yeah, that's just the way I silence that goblin in my head.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. If it works for you and like everybody else is cool with it, and like, you know, you can just go, you're gonna have to, you know, suspend your disbelief a bit there and just let it be the way it is. And then somebody goes, oh, okay. Or they go, okay. But then you just go, I mean, there's nothing that I don't want to spend an hour on this right now, you know? Like,
I ain't remaking this map just because you don't like where I put this forest. Sorry.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like I was very willing to just go, because I had very little knowledge on it, so I was just like, yes, okay, please teach me, because I don't know. And so I learned a little bit, and now I have an updated map that I need to make into an actual good looking map.
Nice.
But
I have an old shitty one apparently then.
Yeah.
Well, shitty.
It's just the first draft of it, which, you know, first drafts are never a good idea to be your final product, to be fair.
That's all right.
But
and yet we have this show.
What do you mean?
Which is by definition a first draft.
I suppose so, but we then continue to revise statements, opinions, and how we stand.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just a learning experience. Shut the fuck up.
Oh, did I strike a nerve? Or
No, I don't give a shit.
You're making your backstory, make sure that it's realistic for the character that you're starting with. If your character was a decorated war hero who led the attack against the rebels on the Shattered Islands, then you might also want to explain how it is that this character is only first level. In my experience, it's far better for your character to have more humble, although they can still be exciting, origins if the character is going to be starting off at the lower rungs of the advancement ladder. Now, if your characters are all going to be starting off mid or high level, sure, you can have all sorts of glorious glorious battles and decorations in your past, but if you're going to be starting off, first or second or third level, then you probably shouldn't have an origin story that involves you doing things that a character of that level would not be able to do, unless that is somehow mentioned in your backstories how you were able to do that, but you can't do that anymore. Next, discuss with your game master how much of your backstory do they want? How much should you give them? Do they simply want a one-paragraph synopsis with bullet points, or do they want a one-page backstory? Verify all this before you drop a 200,000-word manuscript in their lap and expect them to study it. You want to make sure that you give your game master enough that they can work with it.
Big move.
Here's my character. I made flashcards for the test.
Have fun, motherfucker.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that it becomes very daunting when somebody goes, I wrote a 14-page backstory, and I go, I have trouble reading for a while because for these days I can barely just take the time to read a few pages of a book sometimes,
Yeah.
And
And that's even when I even have the inclination to read, and
Exactly.
it's a book that I like.
Exactly, yeah.
It took me a while to get through Mountains of Madness.
Yeah.
But not so much that they feel overwhelmed and end up ignoring it altogether because it's just too big, why even bother starting it? Or if it's so big, they might end up gravitating to a lot of different details that they find interesting that you don't find as interesting, and there aren't the details that you really want them to gravitate to and pull back in your future. So ask your game master beforehand how much backstory they want you to give them. Now, game masters, now it's up to you to tell your players how much backstory you want them to give you. But players, you do need to give your game master something. You're either going to have to give them an electronic file or hand them a physical copy, but you will have to give them a copy of your backstory. Don't just tell it to your game master and expect them to remember. I have trouble remembering what it was that I ate yesterday, let alone a character backstory that one of my players told me about 2 months ago. Now, players, if you want to make a longer and more detailed backstory than what the game master is asking for, then go for it. That's perfectly fine. Please make as detailed a backstory as you want.
That being said, your mileage may vary on this. Speaking personally, I had a hard time remembering one character's backstory until they fleshed it out more. And I had more to work with, and from there was able to start working in some plot hooks upcoming for my campaign. So don't think that just because your backstory is less defined that that'll make it easier for the DM. There does need to be a sort of a critical minimum that needs to be met.
Yeah, that's when I would hope that your DM would say bullet points of main things that they need, right? So that you're at least able to get that much, and then if they need more, they can ask you more. And this is all stuff that I would feel you should be going over on session 0, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no. This it was gone over until I realized that there is an arc I wanted to do with the family. And I realized I had nothing to go off of. And I was like, before we started a session, I'm like, hey, before we begin, tell me about how your family lived in terms of comfort.
Yeah, totally.
Who were the servants in your family? What aspirations did your siblings have? Stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that way you can shape that kind of stuff. Absolutely. And if it's not uncommon for that, I would expect that that in while you're in the session, even after that, you've probably not thought about something, or they've not thought about something, and then that is needed to be expounded upon. Because just more detail is not necessarily a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
But that is for you. Give your game master no more than what they asked for, but if you want to make more for you, then that is perfectly fine. Go right ahead. Personally, for me, whenever one of my players gives me their character backstory,
give your DM minimum what they ask for, but you should probably also develop more, because if you answer only the bullet points that the DM makes, and then you make more stuff for you, you risk making a like in developing the backstory more and
No,
sort of getting married to that idea, and then when the DM throws something that's more counter to that backstory, you're like, oh well, I had
Excuse me.
this.
Yeah, no,
And
that's his point is you can develop, like, he's not saying after the fact, he's saying like once you've developed your backstory, like you have that bare minimum to work with, but if you make your full backstory and you include more, that's perfectly reasonable, and you can give it to
Yeah.
them for them to review.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, like that's fine. It's just I don't really think he was particularly clear about that.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
The biggest thing that I want to see is that it answers a very simple question of how did you get here? How, with all the drama and the excitement, betrayal, tragedy, and intrigue of your past, did you come from your humble beginnings as a regular person to becoming an adventurer? What brought your character into this specific town, into this specific tavern on the night that the adventure hook drops? When somebody comes in and asks for help and you raise your hand and say, why yes, I would love to go explore the haunted house. Or why yes, I would love to go kill goblins in the past that are attacking all of the merchant caravans. If your character came from the faraway land of somewhere or another, what brought you to this land? Give me a path of how you started from being an orphan stable boy all the way to being the gun-for-hire adventurer that you are at the start of the first session. Of course, you know, there are going to be a few exceptions to that. There's always exceptions in role-playing games. I've personally done a few campaigns where I specifically told my players that I didn't want them to play adventurers. I wanted them to play average people that had the potential to become adventurers. But those were special requests by me as the game master, is something that I want, where the critical step of where they were going to go from average people to adventurers was something that we were going to role-play out over the course of the campaign. So the big key when you're doing your character backstory is that it answers the question as how they became the person they are once the game begins. I have seen some spectacular backstories, but where the characters still failed to answer that simple question. And that question is, at what point did you go from being an interesting NPC to a player character? Another thing.
Unfortunately, we're going to be just going over more points that we've already gone over in the last video, so there's not going to be too much more that we can add. But overall, yeah, I mean, he's basically saying a lot of the same things the guy did, and I'm agreeing.
One of the thing that stuck out to me most about this video is it's still coming up. It's one of his skits, actually, and it illustrates a very, very, very good point.
Okay.
And yeah.
Worth mentioning is a lot of players are interested in doing what we call secret backstories. Maybe they're a fugitive on the run. Maybe they're a spy for a foreign power. Maybe they have a tragic past and they're on a quest for vengeance and they don't like talking about those painful memories. However, in my personal experiences, those secret backstories that player characters have are much more enjoyable and much more successful if they're known to the rest of the players around the table. Now, it's perfectly fine if none of the other player characters know, and once again, all of this is always going to be case by case, but the success rate of characters that have backstories that are a mystery to everyone inside and around the table is far less than most people would think. I personally prefer that all the
Yeah, it can be hard to pull off a character who doesn't want to talk about his past because it's not relevant.
Yeah.
Or because it's safest for him to not talk about his past.
Right.
And it's hard to differentiate that from a character who just does not have a developed backstory.
Yeah.
They oftentimes look the same but only slightly edgier.
Exactly. Yeah, I know from experience. It's one of those things of when we've implemented in our Wednesday games. We've implemented an idea. I think I might have talked about this before. Maybe not on the podcast. I don't know. But we've implemented the idea that one of my friends brought up, which is something that he does where it's campfire stories, quote unquote. Where when you have that.
Oh, yep.
When you have that moment, or when you're all around the campfire at the end of the day, maybe talking a little bit, it might be about like your backstory or bits of it, or just something about the day, or any of that kind of stuff where you can get that kind of development between the characters. And like we have a character that doesn't talk much in the party, just because more serious, doesn't have a lot of things, but also because the player themselves is a little less comfortable with that because they're still trying to get into that headspace with this character. And like I can totally understand that, and I assume there's a backstory there that's interesting that that we'll go into more. But it is one of those things of like, because I don't know that, it's just looking at the person not talking and going, edgelord.
Yeah, that is true.
But I mean, I have all faith that things will be revealed at some point that will make me go, oh.
Yeah, and I mean, it's what we're doing with our campaign right now.
Yep.
Where I know each of you guys' backstories, but the others don't.
Yep.
And so I'm sowing seeds, hopefully, of interest, and all of you guys are, especially with like Brogan and his spells,
necromancy
yes,
stuff.
Yeah, his pseudo necromancy, really weird.
Yeah, and so he's sowing seeds of interest, like what, and he doesn't know why it's happening.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
And unfortunately, I haven't been able to do much with Mez yet, but that's okay.
That's
now.
fine. Yeah, Mez is...
I've seen a few seeds that have been soaked by.
There's a couple
Alejo.
of things.
It's true. Yeah, I've been able to drop a couple hints, but yeah.
Yeah.
And so it depends on the group. And again, just like he said, it's a case by case basis where it can work and it also can not work. But yeah.
Just got to figure out how your group is.
Yeah.
There is also like, you don't have to incorporate a character's backstory into the campaign. Like,
no. Yeah.
Boris's backstory flavors and sort of colors how he perceives the world and people, and it's been a situation of, I lived in one area and some stuff happened and it sucked, then I lived in another area and some stuff happened and it sucked, and now I'm here and this sucks. I don't like you.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I will outlive you, and I will watch you die, I will watch your children die, I do not care.
Yeah.
And like, if we ever explore Boris's backstory in the campaign, like, so much the better. But even if Boris's backstory never like gets mentioned or like visited, then like, I know and you know, Boo, what Boris's history is, and that is pretty much all it needs. All that we need.
I was gonna say, it's not a big relevant kind of part of his life.
Because
exactly.
It's a character backstory is very good for painting a picture of where your character wants to go. Character backstory can be very interesting, and it can have you can have elements from it popping up, but it's important to know that it's always about moving forward. You know. So even if you have this backstory, it's like, oh man, I was a dirty cop and my partner got killed, and then I had to go and get revenge on the guy who killed him, and then after I got my revenge, it turned out his son is coming to kill me. You know,
and then as it turns out, through a long conflated series of events, I was actually responsible for my own partner's death.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it turns out that actually I was the son of the man that I killed, so I have to kill myself now. Bye. You know, so you can have all those really interesting backstories and all that stuff going on, but you shouldn't ever really be upset with your DM if he has trouble implementing it, or if he doesn't implement it, as long as he tells you that that's what might happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's just where you were. It's more important about where you're going and when you get there.
Yeah, the present moment is really what's like, the present and the future are what's super important. The past will come up when it comes up. And like the I guess unless certain things, like as they do, unless certain things are super influential on the character, that will be reflected regardless. Like it doesn't. It could become a plot point, it could become a plot hook, but regardless of that, it will always be reflected in how that character is.
Yeah.
Because they are the way they are because of their backstory. And the other thing is for groups that are larger than ours, right? It's a little harder to incorporate everyone's things because you gotta like make sure that everybody's you want to make sure that everybody gets their spotlight and all that stuff. Even with our smaller group, I can assume it's sometimes difficult to think about like, you know, what you want to implement where, and what makes sense.
What do you mean we can't go to all four corners of the mortal plane as well as like seedy underbellies of discs in order to make sure that everyone has an arc about them?
Exactly.
Yeah, right?
Like it's you have to do a few sacrifices along the way just to maintain the story that is going to be told here. Especially since I know you have that story planned. And so, like, I have no qualms with the fact that some of what Mez wants to do will never happen. That's totally fine.
Well,
right?
Don't say that. Not with that attitude.
I mean, so you know what I mean, though.
I know.
Yeah, Boris is fine with backing up these plans.
Yeah, exactly. Like what I mean.
That you own him,
right? He kind of has to. Like legitimately, it's one of those things of So yeah, you know what I mean. It's just like if it never happens, right? If it never happens, then I'm totally okay with things never happening. But I can see like because we have the smaller group, the more intimate ability to focus on 3 people instead of 4, instead of 5, instead of like any of that. You know, yeah.
3 longtime players and friends are easier to write stories for than 5 strangers.
Exactly. That's also the case.
And we all typically kind of generally like the same stuff. So we have relatively similar senses of humor. Everybody enjoyed the cat chase scene.
Oh, hell yeah.
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 And I imagine a lot of people might not think that was fun or a worthwhile use of their time or, you know.
Yeah, it's more easy to get communally hype.
Yes. Yeah, for us, yeah.
Players around the table know whatever the secret is. That way we can all enjoy the secret as it kind of unfolds and different dramas happen with it in it. Even if the player characters inside the game have no idea or it might take a while before they discover it, or maybe they won't discover it at all, it's much more successful in my experience if all of the players know what the secret is very early on. Now, this is one of the biggest points that I want to make today. When I spoke earlier about the frequent player complaint that I see of players saying, well, my game master isn't incorporating my backstory enough in the campaign, and how my knee-jerk response whenever I see that complaint is, well, that's likely your fault. Well, the reason that it could be the player's fault could be one of the points that I mentioned earlier, that it's not coming from somewhere on the map, or it doesn't really work for the campaign, or they never verified it with the game master to begin with. The most common culprit why it is a player's fault is that the player does not realize that 95% of incorporating the character's backstory is the player's responsibility. The backstory shouldn't just be a list of NPCs that might pop back up in the character's life. The backstory should explain and be apparent in the ways that the character behaves after they start playing. Let me show you an example. After jumping back into the star system and passing through customs, your characters make it to the starport's cantina. Patrons from all over the system stand at the bar and sit at the various tables, murmuring in half a dozen alien languages. The bar itself stands in the middle, operated by a surly-looking man with a cybernetic arm. I guess I'll just go sit at a table. My character is a wanted man on 2 systems. This would have been a great time for me to bring in a bounty hunter or someone who knows who I really am. He totally dropped the ball on me. I guess I'll sit down with him. I can't believe Theft didn't give me a message about my thick sister once we arrived back in message range. I mean, the entire motivation for my character is getting money to cure her illness. It's a great backstory, and I wasted it on this character because he isn't using it. I'm gonna go to the bar and get us some space whiskey. I can't believe there's no Omicrons here. Seth should know how much my character hates them, and a bar fight would be a fun way to apply my backstory. Lazy-ass game master. Might as...
So before it goes, because I can see where this is going, they didn't ask. They didn't say anything, right? Like, they didn't... You could quite literally just, like, go...
Exactly.
Yeah, go, like, are there
that's
any...
the point.
Yeah. Okay, then I'll let it play out.
Yeah, and then, like, the second half of the thing is them actually role-playing out their backstories and motivations and stuff.
Alright, gotcha.
backstory if he ain't gonna use it. Okay, so we have 3 characters that enter a bar, and all 3 players are disappointed the Game Master isn't weaving elements from all of their personal backstories into that scene because it would have been a great opportunity for it. That makes sense. On the surface, that sounds like a very legitimate complaint. But at the same time, all 3 of those players failed that scene even more than the Game Master did. Now watch this. The bar itself stands in the middle, operated by a surly-looking man with a cybernetic arm. Okay, since my character is a wanted man, I want to be sure that I don't see any patches or insignias from any of those systems that are looking for me. Roll a recon. 9? You don't see any, but it's kind of hard to tell with the group on the far side. Then I'm going to choose a table far away from them. And I want to see if I can position myself in a way that I can watch them through mirrors or reflections, because I am paranoid there could be bounty hunters. Once he sits down, I'm going to join him and immediately open up my data tablet to see if there's any missed messages or updates about my sick sister. No messages. Oh, well then I'm going to shoot a message to my mom to tell her that I got the money and I'm going to be sending it to her soon. There any Omicrons here? You don't see any. Good, because I'd go to a different bar if there were any. Well, this is the only bar on the space station. And it's a good thing there aren't, otherwise I'd have to kick their butts. I'm going to go get us some space whiskeys. So here we had the exact same setup, and instead of just waiting and expecting for the Game Master to pull all their backstories in, each of the players takes charge and shows how their character is going to behave and respond based off of their own backstories for themselves.
My only issue was with the being a wanted man thing, unless, of course, everyone knows that already, like, the player characters are already, like, aware that he's a wanted man. Don't just say, you know...
Yeah, don't just drop that into people's laps.
Exactly. Like, I assume at that point that they're aware that's why he said it out loud. I hope so. Right.
They're playing Traveler, and so it could have very easily come up just in character creation that they have like an enemy.
Gotcha.
Because you can actually roll that up and your character's like, oh, you have an enemy, and it's this guy. It's like,
gotcha.
Oh shit.
Okay. Yeah. The more that we talk about Traveler, the more I want to try it out.
It's very interesting.
The Game Master at this point is merely playing off of all the players as they investigate things or doing things that they want to do, such as checking for messages or looking for people that they don't want to see. This is a much better scene all around, and it's all because the players applied their own backstories to their own actions. And the other huge benefit that happens when players do this is, one, it reminds everybody at the table, especially the Game Master, that these backstories are there. And two, it stresses to the Game Master that these backstories are important to the players around the table, and this now means that the Game Master, the chance of them applying backstories in future games and working all that in, has exponentially increased. Sometimes Game Masters, we need a little bit of a reminder as far as that the backstory is important to all the players around the table, or even what those backstories are. So it's good to give a Game Master a reminder from time to time, and it's far more effective of a reminder by demonstrating your enthusiasm towards your backstory and how your character is approaching it and reacting off of it than it is just to gripe at your Game Master for not using your backstory that you're not using either. But
I will say, while I do agree that demonstrating enthusiasm is like the most ideal way to show to your Game Master that you're interested or eager for perhaps getting a few more Easter eggs about your backstory, I will say, for me, one of the most fun bits about starting up a new campaign is if I don't know anything about the other characters that are joining. And there's almost like this game where everyone's kind of side-eyeing each other, and someone will drop a line that like is a little bit related to the backstory, and people are like, "Fucking writing that down."
Yep, I've done that many a time. I've done that actually many a time.
And I absolutely love doing that.
Yeah. That's
like compiling a dossier on your party members.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I am making an internal investigation in my party just to make sure that I know exactly who I'm dealing with.
Yeah. I had a character who was an author, who, as he was going around, he was writing basically a book about his adventures, and that was the way that I was the party scribe. Was I kept notes of what happened from my character's perspective, and he was writing a new adventure book. But as he was doing so, he was also taking notes on everyone that he was traveling with, like off to the side, and saying like, all right, so and so is this, they're a treasure hunter, so and so is this, I can't seem to get a beat on him, so and so is this, okay, and sort of compiling little bullet points on each people as like information dribbled in.
Yeah, it was cool. I remember every time you would ask, like, you would have make a specific kind of entry. You would ask, like, just to be reminded of some of the things that would happen, because you wanted to make that book report, quote unquote, right? It was great. It was really fun. Man, I missed that. That was really good.
I'm just disappointed I never got the chance to fully kill them all.
Yeah, well, you know.
Yeah. But whether a game master ever uses the backstory or not, it doesn't change the fact that the players are all using them, and that improves and only rounds out their own characters. Also, when a game master does decide to bring a backstory back into a character's life, it's going to make a lot more sense for the story narrative if the PC has been referring to their backstory all along. Imagine you're watching some television show and you've been enjoying it for a while, then in one random episode in Season 3, the hero mentions that they don't want to go visit Australia because their sister was eaten by dingoes when they were a kid. Now, if this character in this TV show has never once mentioned sisters or dingoes or an aversion to Australia, this revelation in Season 3 is going to feel weirdly random. It's going to feel like something that the writers just came up with to tack on to add a little bit of drama about this episode that happened to involve Australia.
I knew you were going to go there.
I mean, it's the go-to example, dude. Like,
I just watched Mahler's Season 8, Episode 5.
Oh, yeah.
Oh boy.
It's you can put God, there's so many examples. Anyway,
A Targaryen alone in the world is a dangerous thing.
it's unfortunately more and more of this fucking crap writing is coming out, so it's easy to find examples.
Every time a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin. I don't know if you can tell that I'm like twisting around in my chair, but like. I will not be queen of the ashes.
Yeah.
For those 2 or 3 seasons leading up to it, the characters have been making regular comments about something that happened in their past, a reference to a sister that died, or a hatred of dingoes, or a fear of Australia. Then it's going to feel much more natural in Season 3 when this episode comes up and a character has to look at Australia and deal with some sort of tragedy from their past. So a player who's regularly implementing pieces from their own.
That being said, as a DM, when you have like a couple sentences of story about a village and you say one sentence later on and the players come up with like 5 sentences of exposition and they're like, oh, that's so it's all connected like this, huh? And you're like writing notes and you're like, yes, it is.
Jump
They're
into
like,
conclusion.
you've been plotting this for the past 8 months. Yep. How many clues have we missed? And like you just turn to them, give them a disappointed look, and say, "I'd rather not say."
Give that illusion of being the puppet master behind it all.
Yep. When because the whole time you're just like, that's the sound your brain is making all session long.
I'm riding in the mining cart as it's going down the slope, just going. And then I look and all the other players are in the mining cart too, and they're like, "Oh, you have this plotted out," and I'm like,
looking at the track ahead, can only see so far because it curves into a bit of cave, and you're like, I know where I'm going.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh boy, what's at the end of this ride, huh?" And you flip ahead a few pages in your notebook to a blank page, and you tap it with your pencil a couple times, and you're like, "I'll never tell."
Yeah, right. Except in the Call of Cthulhu campaign, you're gonna say that, and I'm gonna be like, "Yep,
yeah." I hope
had
so.
Years to plan this shit out.
story is now just laying the groundwork for that eventual day that might lead back to their past when the game master decides to latch onto that and bring that back into the game itself. And now it's going to feel much more natural and less randomly tacked on. So while yes, a game master is strongly encouraged to weave the backstory into the game, the bulk of that needs to be done unprompted by the players themselves. This is also helpful to remember if the game master might need to wait a few games before they can bring your backstory back in. So definitely be patient. Depending on the campaign and how many players and therefore backstories they have, it might take several games before your backstory becomes a big plot point. Also, the game master might be waiting until your character has reached a certain level or certain skill threshold before they want to weave your backstory back in. Let's take Inigo Montoya. Inigo has this wonderful backstory. His father was killed by a six-fingered swordsman, and Inigo's quest for revenge has led him to a lifetime of training. He tells us about this when he meets the man in black, asking if the man has 6 fingers on his right hand. He then tells us the story about his father. Inigo prompts this discussion, so the player in this case utilized their backstory and brought it up himself. Later we meet the villain from Inigo's past, and Inigo gets his duel. So from a viewer's perspective, we have a quick resolution of all this. Within 2 hours, we learn of Inigo's story, and then he gets revenge. It's all nice and neat. However, that's not how it went at all for Inigo. By the time we even met him, he is one of the greatest swordsmen alive. He spent 20 years training for this duel. He is not a first level character. He's not even a 7th level character. He is a veteran character. So in game terms, Inigo's game master didn't bring the 6-fingered man back into Inigo's life until he had actually grown all the way up to where he was powerful enough to face him. This took a while, but this whole time, Inigo's player never forgot. He still was always looking for his enemy, and he was always very quick to tell his own backstory. And eventually the game master did bring in Inigo's backstory. So players, don't expect your own backstory to come back in right away. It might take you 10 levels before the game master even begins considering using it once you're powerful enough, and therefore it thematically makes sense that now you are ready for revenge, or now you are ready to retake the throne. But that whole time, while you're waiting for the game master to bring it back in, you need to be employing your backstory yourself. However, sometimes a game master is not always going to be able to weave a backstory back into the campaign. So, let's say you've done everything right. You've given the game master a compelling backstory with interesting characters and possible hooks for future adventures, and it's all perfectly fitted into the game world that the game master has planned for you and that you're going to be playing in. You gave the game master exactly the right amount of information that they requested. Good job. However, for many reasons that are going to be completely outside of your control, the game master might not be able to incorporate it, or might not be able to incorporate it for an extendedly long period of time. And that's because when the game master tells you where the campaign is going to be beginning, they aren't necessarily divulging to you where the campaign is going to go. Sometimes it might go somewhere very different than you're initially expecting. So let's say your campaign is set in 1930s Europe, and the machines of war are beginning to stir, and the Nazis are increasing their military power. You and your brave team of spies are sent to capture a German submarine and learn what nefarious plans the enemy has in store. All of you have beautiful backstories, friends and enemies, loves and hatreds, all spun in elaborate narratives that you hope your game master is going to employ. Maybe old rivals or old flames are going to reappear in your life. Maybe your campaign is going to weave in a lot of their real history, and now your characters are taking part in events that did actually happen in history. However, then 1 hour into your first game, after you've taken this Nazi submarine, the heroes are suddenly all captured in a whirlpool, and they're suddenly deposited inside the hollow earth that's populated by dinosaurs. They're now the first humans here in over 1 million years, and now the campaign is going to follow them as they fight to survive, conserving their now limited ammo as they brave this strange land on a quest to get back home to the ones that they love. If you were to do a campaign like that, which is certainly awesome sounding, it doesn't make much room for bringing in a lot of characters and elements from a player character's past, because getting back to where they started is what the whole theme is. Yeah, sure, it would be possible for the game master to bring in some rescue expedition or something like that that might involve characters from a player's past, but that's not going to be a very common thing. It's going to be hard for a game master to do that very often, so best to assume that the players are not going to be able to have much of their backstory brought back in by the game master, and until then it's completely their own job to be responding to their own backstories. Sometimes
I would say for that it would rely entirely on how they interact as the party. because say you have one of them has the backstory where they are they've left their wife because not left, but like they've left their wife behind at home. Bahome, so that they could go off to war and, you know, fight and all that stuff, and now they're here, and one of the other characters is has been single for their entire life and is kind of fancying this character now because they're kind of stuck together. But you then have the one who has the wife is tested in a way of like if they're loyal to their wife overall, like that is one of their driving reasons to get home, and what if they, you know, would if they have that hope still of getting home, then probably they would remain that way. But if they're at this point of like, we now need to, I don't know, survive and populate, I suppose, like make sure that well, it's just one of those things. It becomes this question, right, of like that informs the backstory more so, and so it's less about bringing stuff in and more just the utilization of it for the situations.
The Game Master's been planning all along to throw in some sort of fun twist where they're hurled like John Carter into a strange and distant land. Other times, this was something that the Game Master hadn't planned at all. Sometimes through the course of the adventures themselves, through magic items or technology and a few bad dice rolls. Now, to everyone's surprise at the table, the plot has now shifted to the player characters trying to get home from somewhere else, kind of like Star Trek Voyager. So, if for whatever reason the campaign has now shifted to a way that's not very...
Except hopefully it's got less episodes where they could just go home and they just don't because
TV shows and seasons and ratings and money. Aiden, you still here?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Incorporating the backstory, the players should still all respond and use their characters in a way that reflects what their own backstories are. So players don't dwell on the fact that your backstory might not be used as often or in the same way that you were originally wanting it to be. Instead, you should focus and enjoy in what it is that you have and what the Game Master has given you, rather than focusing all your attention onto what you don't have. In my experience, people that seem to focus more on what they don't have rather than what they have are the ones that forget to have fun. And after all, having fun is what this is all about. Hi, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please...
Okay, yeah. I mean, we didn't comment very much at the end there because he was just going over points that I had nothing to really add, unfortunately.
It's hard to critique something that when you hear it, you just go,
yeah, like, legitimately, it's...
But hey, it is nice to have a night where we have two good videos.
Honestly, yeah, it's refreshing.
Better get some real shitty ones for next time.
Nah. No.
Oh yeah, because then we'll have Juice on.
It's true. I was gonna say, if
we can make him an angry boy.
Well, to be fair, we have our topic picked, and I don't know about how.
Oh, I can find some bad stories for you.
That's true. That's fair. So yeah. Well, that's gonna be it about the backstories. Unless we want a third video, which we could very well do.
We could.
Up to you.
I am totally down for it. We could try to find something that is still involving backstory.
Let me see if I can find a backstory does not matter.
Ooh,
oh boy,
that would be interesting.
5 awful backstory cliches by Dungeon Dudes. Critical Role twisted a player's expectations of D&D. How to avoid dumb character backstories by Guy. 6 questions you should always ask when creating new Dungeons and Dragons character by taking 20.
How long is it?
12 minutes 32 seconds.
Potentially.
We only got an hour.
We have as much time as we want, dude. What do you mean?
We have 52 minutes.
Oh no,
that's it. At least on my clock.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know, man. Maybe we're just maybe we just hang out and talk a bit more just about backstory. Maybe I don't want to get angry today. Maybe I want today to be overall okay.
A post on reddit.com is no backstory a big deal.
Okay, a text post. Okay, yeah, fuck, yeah, why not? Let's link it. We'll look at it.
I don't think it's gonna be. Hold on, let me get.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it and it's not like anything other than
a question for the DMs out there. Imagine you were running a game that starts at first level, and one of the players made a character whose backstory pretty much said did unremarkable stuff, got bored of doing unremarkable stuff, so they became an adventurer. Would you get upset/annoyed? If yes, why? And people just saying I'd consider it a red flag. If anything, I'm more worried about players who have ridiculously detailed backstories. I wouldn't be annoyed. I did have a character in my campaign who wanted to be a Khajiit, see also Tabaxi fighter. When I asked him what his character looked like, he described that it was more panther-like, so it was just black. And I'm like, hair on nape of my neck is starting to raise, and I'm like, what's their family situation like? Oh, orphan. What did they do for work before they became an adventurer? Oh, they're a mercenary. And before that, where did they get their training? Oh, got kicked out of the army for not obeying orders. And I'm like,
we're getting farther and farther into that little spiral there.
John Rambo.
Yeah, he was there for like 3 sessions and did nothing productive except drink. And then the player IRL had to move, and I was like, bye.
Okay. Fair enough.
And the campaign went on like he never existed because he barely did.
I was gonna say, it's one of those things where
it was one of those situations where he was living with the person who hosts our game, and he had only played a little bit of D&D in his life. So I'm like, yeah, you can join our game.
Yeah,
I suppose. Okay. I cannot say no.
Yeah, legitimately. Yeah, not a big fan.
And he's like, man, you guys all have like so interesting backstories, and I'm like looking at him, I'm like, they sure do.
It's almost like they came up with them.
Boy.
Yeah. There's a lot of I can understand when people are they feel it's daunting, right, to create such things, because it very much can be. I know I struggle to every now and again just like think about relevant things, and like I very much am more so in need of guidance personally for that kind of stuff in a lot of cases, because it's one of those things where like I can come up with basics, and basics can get you so far. And then once I'm actually questioned about stuff, that's when my brain starts turning on and goes, oh yeah, what about that? And then I start thinking about it more so, because like otherwise sometimes my mind will just go, haha, I did it. And then that's it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I did it. Cool. But that's just a personal thing, unfortunately.
The thing that I have is it's really, really hard for me to come up with a backstory as opposed to a character. Like,
yeah.
I can riff and make a character like
that, easy.
And that. Like, okay, Warforged wild magic sorcerer who does not understand why he's casting magic because he is a robot, and robots are not supposed to cast magic, and oh my god, help me.
They're literally infused with it when they're created. But...
he thinks that robots are not supposed to cast magic.
Gotcha. That's fine.
And they're like, "Oh, wow, that's cool. What's your backstory?" And he's like, I woke up in a tomb, and there were people that were coming in, and I knew I had to kill them, so I killed them. And I took one guy's sword and like started defending and patrolling the area like I'm supposed to do, and then I left. It's like, why did you leave? I was casting magic.
Yeah, yeah, like I can it's the weird thing of like where I can spend a day writing out a bunch of stuff that happened in the world. But for a single person, it's like my man, he was a peasant originally. He is no longer a peasant. Yay.
See, now I want to fucking play in a campaign where we try to come up with the most lame, boring, nothing backstories ever, and just try to get them to stick somewhere.
I mean,
it's literally a business campaign. We start a shop. Like
no. Like one person is the dark and brooding rogue. The other.
Oh, you want stereotype?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Trope and stereotype. I see.
Yes.
I was going to say, if you want a boring character creation, that is literally what Jedediah was supposed to be.
That's right.
Yeah, it's true.
But still.
Don't get me wrong, it did not stop me from falling in love with him.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can make him interesting very easily. Just by his actions and stuff.
Yeah.
Because of it, right? Like
farmer from fucking space Utah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Exactly. So like yeah. Honestly, at this point, I'm thinking we probably don't have too much more to say about backstory stuff.
Oh, I would say for me, backstory and class are typically pretty hand in hand.
Oh yeah.
So if you're ever worrying about like, okay, why did my character leave home? All right, they had to leave because of this, and it is also because of this threat that they got skills with this. So if you're ever really just drawing a blank for your character, think about what they do in combat, what they do in role play, and from there determine, okay, what's their demeanor like, and then how did those three things form the stool that is my backstory.
Actually, thinking about it more, if you're incredibly in need of some guidance, there are obviously tables that you can look at, such as the life path system from Cyberpunk, such as the tables that are in Xanathars, such as the bonds and such that are in the player's handbook for 5e. All of these kinds of things, there are those examples of questions that you can answer just by seeing those as your guidelines, or just using them straight up. There is nothing wrong with using, as we've said before, using those tables and stuff to come up with a character and then make it your own afterwards.
Yeah.
Don't forget to make a compelling character so that the DM can then also roll out additional details for you.
Right, and remember, it's never going to be original enough. They will put more stuff in.
Yes. Also be random.
Oh yeah, be random but predictable. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave off, honestly.
I'm happy to have a happy episode.
Yeah, it's been what, we're 28 in, have a couple every now and again. Feel like, having that nice breather.
This is, I think, our second or third.
Yeah, I was thinking 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So I think we've honestly given our final thoughts as well already. Like,
yeah,
pretty much.
Read your player's handbook. Come up with an interesting, or even if a backstory is interesting to only you, like, come up with. How do I put this?
Come up with a backstory
if
you're
it-
happy with.
If your character backstory can't be interesting, it should at least be fleshed out.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So yeah, I guess, hey, thanks for listening. We have a bunch of shit that I'm gonna now tell you about.
Goody. You can go ahead and leave now if you want.
Oh no, don't leave.
Don't forget to smash that like button.
And the subscribe button and the notification bell.
This episode brought to you by your fellow dear listener.
There you go. So, yes, we have many of things. They're all going to be in the description. So if you don't want to listen to me list them off, look at the description for information. But we have the TableTalk D&D.us as our main little website thing that we have information for every single thing that I'm going to go over after this. And hopefully I can spruce it up more because it is functional at the moment. It is definitely that. Other than that, we have the podcast here that premieres on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then again at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Mondays on your audio podcasting service of choice, or around then, depending on when they publish them. For some reason, they publish them at different times, but we also have our campaign that we've been going through, Devils and Dice. It is on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at TableTalkD&D. You can send us an email at to TableTalkD&D at gmail.com. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/TableTalkDND, and you can get into our Discord via a link in the description. You can also see the link on the screen on the right there. Other than that, I think that's it. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, other than that, next time we're going to have Juice on. If you missed it, we did a live stream with him over on his channel. I'll link that as well in the description. Very fun, very cool guy. Can't wait to have him on. And you should go watch the stream because it was basically one of these, just a little shorter. But yeah, it'll be a good time, hopefully, and I think that is actually it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Fuck
Bye.
off. Go away.
Bye now. Goodbye.
Leave.